The young man opens his eyes wide and does not understand where he has ended up. The place looks like paradise, but what exactly is he doing here? The boy clearly remembers. He was just sitting and enjoying a cartoon series that was part of the Sunday TV program. Suddenly, an unknown voice pushes the main character out of his thoughts and calls the boy's name Keize Hyasuda. The young man suddenly turns and looks at the girl with long golden hair, completely bewildered. Without realizing it himself, he involuntarily says that he feels as if he is in paradise. An extraordinarily beautiful girl appears before him. Straight light hair, blue eyes and revealing clothing. The young man blushed and could not understand in his thoughts where such a beautiful cosplayer had come from in this place. He rubbed the back of his head with his hand, muttered an apology with a crooked smile, and asked the girl her name. Closing one eye, the lady asked the hero if he had really come here to talk. And once again she answered his previous question, saying that now he was truly in paradise. After a thorough investigation, they decided to send Keize Hyasuda to another world. The main character simply froze in amazement and could not utter a single word. The girl responded joyfully to his question, although he had not asked it. Placing her hand on her chest, she replied that she was the goddess of beauty named Aphrodite. It was she who would send the young man to the other world, but first she needed to teach him. The young man asked for a moment, and then said that he did not understand a word of what she said. Sighing, the girl spread her arms to the sides and said that everything would be fine because she was here precisely, so that a scum like him would not die the most miserable death in the new world. She points at him with her finger and loudly declares that this is exactly why the boy should stop looking at her with his eyes and listen carefully. First, let him imagine the player's profile in front of him. And in the young man's thoughts, everything revolves around the image that was told to the girl. Of course, he was in pain, but he behaved like a mature and restrained person. He closed his eyes and imagined the player's profile. Suddenly, a black screen appeared before him. Several characteristics of the hero appeared on the screen. The girl laughed at the fact that the young man was a professional monster tamer. She even said that the hero would train slugs. Keize Hyasuda looked at the goddess's reaction in surprise and did not understand what she was talking about. The girl continued to tell, the main character will be sent to the world of Athlegate. There everything is arranged so that at birth the heavens grant a person a purpose and a life path. Behind all this is the monster Tamer, most futile and completely unnecessary role. She also said that this profession suits the hero because in another world he was a bore. He only played computer games and watched anime. His profession is absolutely useless, just like him. The protagonist tried to digest everything he was told. He couldn't shake the thought, the girl was not who she pretended to be. She looked so sweet and yet was actually a very bad person. He was still bothered by why he was the same nerd when he studied hard in high school, and even arrived in heaven in his school uniform. He finds it hard to believe that he is now in heaven and that a goddess is standing before him. Then he lowers his gaze to where his player profile still hangs. He is interested in his skill ball capsule. As soon as he asked himself this question, another window immediately appeared before him. He understood. It was enough to just think about something and the details would appear on the panel by themselves. The window said that the ball capsule allows him to capture monsters and use them for his own purposes. The young man pondered how to obtain this capsule. He realized the profile opens as soon as you focus on it, and he decided to test this on the capsule. Suddenly, a spherical object with protrusions appeared before him. It was a spherical capsule. He took it in his hands and rejoiced everything worked. Aphrodite clarified, the dandelion capsule for monsterlugers is considered a basic item. If you hit the monster directly with it, there is a chance to take control of it. Leaning over, the girl said that now she would send the hero to his new world. The young man asked her to wait, wanted to conduct an experiment. The girl agreed to wait. Suddenly, the hero drew his sword, struck with it, and declared that the goddess herself was to blame for everything. And then he threw the capsule with the ball straight at the girl. She was very surprised and the ball hit her right in the head. The girl grabbed the capsule and shouted that this thing only works on monsters, so she doesn't understand why the boy threw this bullet at her. Suddenly, a spherical capsule flashed with an extremely bright light. And suddenly she began to pull the goddess's body inside. With a scream, the girl disappeared, and the capsule flew straight into the hands of the main hero. He looked inside the capsule and saw Aphrodite about the size of an eraser. Suddenly, another window with information appeared before the young man. It displayed the indicators of who had entered the spherical capsule. The young man froze in surprise. The indicators were too high, and he immediately understood inside was definitely a goddess. The girl began pounding on the walls of the capsule with all her might, and shouting that this situation was by no means funny. She asked the young man to let her out because what was happening was a crime against the gods. The boy scratched the back of his head and said he just really wanted to try because he couldn't resist. He still doesn't understand what to do next. The girl, sitting on his lap, begins to cry and politely asks him to let her go. Honestly, the hero, looking at the clouds, still did not understand what was happening and where he had ended up at all. But whatever happens, the goddess is now beside him. He raises his hand with the capsule right above himself and smiles. The protagonist was suddenly summoned to heaven and made a monster tamer without asking his opinion. First of all, he caught the goddess with a new skill ball capsule. Leaning his hand on his thigh and looking at the capsule, the young man pondered what to do next. Suddenly, an unknown white beam flashes above the young man. He was scared and did not understand what was happening. Everything around disappeared. Opening his eyes, he sees himself in an unknown place, everything around strangely trembling. He raises his gaze to the sky and sees. The sun is blue, and in the center of the flowers, strange eyes. The boy realized he definitely had not been sleeping, and that means he really found himself in another world. So first the boy needs to get to the nearest city. He noticed a path and understood, sooner or later it would lead him to the city. Suddenly he saw a creature resembling a small person. The young man realized it was a monster disguised as a goblin. The man began to think about what to do and whether it was worth attacking him. As often happens in video games, the player's first opponent is a goblin, so the boy gets a chance to test the combat system. He also believed that monster hunters should not engage in battle with the enemy themselves. He looks into the capsule and sees the goddess Aphrodite there. She is in tears, barely murmuring how it could have happened that she ended up in such a situation. The young man thinks, as he thought the girl has not disappeared anywhere. He tries to figure out how to summon the goddess. The young man thinks he needs to focus on this again as he did before. Staring at the goddess, he calls Aphrodite. Suddenly, the spiritual capsule begins to glow. The goddess Aphrodite appears right before the hero. The onlooker stammers. The hero smiles an innocent smile and greets the girl, saying he is glad to see her again. Opening her eyes, the girl realized that she was already outside the capsule and is sobbing. She understood that she managed to break free, and suddenly confusion turned into anger at the young man. She lunges at the hero who summoned her and accuses him in the name of all that is holy, holier than holy, that it was he who put her in the capsule. The young man awkwardly smiles and apologizes, saying that she made him a little angry. The girl begins to threaten him. Suddenly, the young man asks the girl to shut up and not to shout. The monster can hear them. The girl looks up at him and hesitantly turns back to the monster, and it turns out to be an ordinary goblin chasing a small fluffy rabbit. Suda repeats the girl's words and asks if she can handle him. The girl says it is easy for her because she is a goddess. The young man asks if Aphrodite can drive him away. The girl says that it seems there is no other way, but after all this, she expects an explanation from the young man. The girl sneaks up behind the monster, raises her hand, and calls the goblin a miserable creature. She announces that the true goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, is addressing the goblin and calls for heavenly punishment to be carried out. Suda expects what might happen next. After all, Aphrodite is still a goddess. The goddess calls the divine wind, and Suda orders to smear this goblin on the ground. But nothing happens and Suda understands something went wrong. Aphrodite tries several more times to call the divine wind, but nothing happens. Meanwhile, the goblin begins to attack. The girl tries to escape, but the goblin grabs her by the hem of her dress and the goddess falls to the ground, then asks the judge to help her. The hero understands that he got a useless and faulty goddess, but he could not even imagine that goddesses need help. In his thoughts, he recalls the words of the goddess. Masters with beasts can only train slugs to use the patan, that's all. There is no other way because he has nothing left to lose. He lunges forward and kicks the goblin in the face with all his might. The goblin lost consciousness. Suda looked at him in surprise and thought it was too easy. The victory seemed too easy and that way he protected the goddess. The goblin lay unconscious. Suda was clutching his ball capsule in his hands, and Aphrodite did not understand why all this was happening to her. Suda shifts his gaze to the goddess and says to her, shortening her name to Afro, "Don't lose heart." The girl attacks the hero and says that she is not Afro. Suda apologizes to her. She closes one eye and says that if Suda wants to call her by name, he can just call her D. Of course, she does not like such familiarity, but it is at least better than Afro. Changing the subject, Suda asks why the goddess did not handle that goblin. The girl awkwardly scratches her cheek and says she completely forgot. The powers of the gods work only in the sky. Na also adds that her magic turns all living beings to ash, and if she really were in the heavens, she would have proven it to Suda. And the young man, in turn, decided that goblins are actually quite dangerous opponents. Then Aphrodite asks Suda if he has already figured out his abilities and asks him to look at her profile. He looks at the profile and says that everything except vitality has dropped. She raises her fist to her mouth and says that it will probably be so, because the reason lies in Suda's divine gift. He looks at his profile, where the divine gift absolute dominance is highlighted. After that, the boy asks how the divine gift differs from a skill. The girl explains, skill is what the hero acquires through training and experience, while the divine gift is given from birth. But the divine gift is not given from birth. The thing is, throughout history this gift was received only by the Great One, or rather, a limited circle of people. Suda decides to figure out the details of his divine gift absolute domination. and it says there that this gift is given to those who are capable of subjugating living beings. The girl asks if the boy has seen the details of his skill. Then she starts shouting and says that if Sutin knows why she said, the hero's gift is complete rubbish because the limitation of the bubble capsule, which could only capture monsters, no longer applies. The young man says that on the contrary, this means that with the help of the ball capsule he can also capture people. The girl sighs and replies that of course because everything worked with the goddess. The young man looks at his hand and thinks, when he was given these abilities there was a glitch, there is no other explanation. So now he is a tamer of monsters and people. Suddenly Aphrodite shudders and asks Suda to urgently look at his profile, something is happening to him. The hero's all characteristics sharply increased. The young man turns to the goddess and asks which goblin can give so much experience. The girl shouts that this simply cannot be. The young man makes a stern face and suggests that this could have happened because of Aphrodite. The girl freezes in amazement. She puts her hands on her hips and says that Suda's level is thanks to her, because he caught the goddess of beauty Aphrodite in the capsule ball, that's why he got so much experience. Suda notices the girl's smug face. She continues that the incredible achievements of Suda are actually her secret patronage for the boy. She believes that at this pace they will quickly be able to return to their worlds. The young man looked carefully at the goddess and asked in surprise what she was talking about. The girl realized she had forgotten to explain to him. She says that Sudu was called here to save this world. The young man was very impressed. The prophecy says the return of the mighty demon is near. Until Suda destroys him, he will not be able to return home. For this, the goddess of beauty Aphrodite called Sudu into this world. The young man froze in amazement. He did not understand why he was only learning about this now. He puts his hand on his face and asks if the demon is not here yet and if it is true. The goddess answers that yes, but the trouble is that sooner or later he will rise again. That is why the gods decided to prepare for his return in advance. They sent people from Earth to this world like Sudand made them heroes here. The young man understands there are others besides him. He says it goes like this. As soon as he destroys the demon, he will be returned to Earth and he will lose his abilities. The girl replies, the abilities will remain with him because if a person has already been given certain abilities, the gods cannot take them back. Suda understands. He will be able to take all the creatures he catches into the capsule bottle back to Earth. Aphrodite replies that this is so, but the gods will watch over the hero to prevent him from making mistakes in his world. The hero looks at his palm, clenches it into a fist, and says he understands everything. Now he knows what he will do in this world. The goddess begins to shine and asks the hero if he really decided so stubbornly to defeat the mighty demon. The young man replies that no, not exactly. The girl asks in surprise, is he really one of those who does not want to return to Earth? Suda says, of course, he wants to return home. However, his goal in this world is to hold power and gather as many beautiful girls as possible, and then take them with him to Earth. He pulls forward a spherical capsule. The goddess stops amazed and impressed, and the young man clarifies, these girls from abroad are unparalleled, high in the sky and unreachable hawks soaring in the sweet ether of male fantasies. For this, he is ready to live in a world without anime, Game 7 without air conditioning. He declares that he will destroy the mighty demon, but first he will gather a perfect group of girls. The goddess suddenly jumps up and shouts that in the name of all saints she will not allow this to happen, because she is a goddess and can no longer remain silent. The young man asks if the girl is really sure of her words. He says he will not kill the mighty demon until he gathers a team of the highest quality girls. And if he does not kill the mighty demon, then Aphrodite will not be able to return to her sky. He also asks the confused goddess if she wants to get to her paradise. Therefore, he offers her to make a deal with him. The girl tightly closes her eyes and says that it seems she has no other choice. Although she does not like it, she will help him gather a group of foreign girls. The young man beams with joy and declares that he knew she would agree to help him. They shake hands because from then on Suda and the goddess began a plan called Group of Foreign Girls. When Suda walks along the path, he thinks Aphrodite is a goddess, so she will give him a lot of experience. However, he is gnawed by a question. Why have all the indicators associated with accepting intelligence not grown that much? Aphrodite replies that nothing can be done here, trainers usually have low stats. Suda is surprised and immediately understands. The problem is in the class itself. Suddenly he notices that a new skill has appeared, a skill called Piercing Eye. It appeared along with the level up and the condition, intelligence level above 2000. Suddenly the goddess Aphrodite shouted his name. She looked at the hero and stretched out her hand into the bushes. Another goblin emerged from there. The young man looks at the small goblin jumping out and realizes, now is the time to use Piercing Eye. Suddenly a panel of his skills and parameters appeared next to the goblin. While he was considering how convenient this ability was, Aphrodite shouted at Suda, deal with the goblin and she will do everything so that the boy pulls out the monster. Holding the capsule with the ball, the boy asks the girl, if he captures the monster instead of killing it, will he get less experience? The girl shouts that he will get the same amount. The boy smiles and says he is ready to start. Several hours have passed. Inside the ball capsule were goblins. They even lit a fire. Suda says that he has already caught 18 goblins. However, even with such a basis, he failed to gather a new level, and it seems goblins are not particularly valued. Aphrodite says she is extremely tired. Suda looks at the capsule and replies, "This is a real miracle." It looks very tiny, but it managed to hold so many goblins. He looks closer and sees, inside it is quite spacious. He turns to the goddess and asks if there is a limit to the number of subordinate creatures. The girl answers that of course there is. She explains, at first the young man can conquer only one monster, and for each next one 10 more levels are needed. The young man realizes that now he can gather 56 creatures. They move on. Suddenly Suda imagines a scene. He is sitting on the throne and around him is an army of goblins. The young man does not understand how this could have been allowed at all. His skill is literally one step away from the ability to cheat. If you think about it, now fights are very simple for the young one. Even though the trainers were supposed to be too weak, Suda somehow killed the goblin with a single kick. It turns out that by his level, at least in this clearing, is one of the strongest warriors. He distracts himself from his thoughts and asks one more question, whether he tamed the goblins. The young man thinks that probably he did not like them after he kicked them and then put them into a capsule. The goddess replies that the young man should not worry, for no creature caught by Suda in his capsule can disobey him. Then he glanced at Aphrodite and realized, even if he didn't care about others' feelings, this was too much. After all, if all this is true, then he can play with the goddess as much as he wants without stopping. After coughing and gathering his thoughts, Suda says he wants to conduct an experiment. He asks the girl to spin around. She does not understand what he wants and says, such a great goddess will not obey his orders. And suddenly the girl's body begins to spin in place. Aphrodite screams and asks what is happening to her body. Suda looked with surprise at what was happening. When the girl stopped, she burst out crying, saying the hero is a fool and he does all this in the name of all the saints. The boy scratches the back of his head and says it was a terrible order, but he had to make sure the skill works. Aphrodite blushes and replies that if the boy wants to give her such an order, he should just ask. Then she says that she hopes the young man did not intend to give her orders to do something bad. The young man asks the girl in surprise where she knew about this from, and also, do the gods really have the gift of prophecy? The goddess blushes, presses her hands to her chest and begins to scream. Then she asks the young man to listen and says that she agreed to help him gather a group of foreign girls, but does not intend to become his concubine. The boy asks why, because what if she liked it? The girl screams and says what the boy means. She hits him in the face. Suda thinks he was wrong because after all Aphrodite is the goddess of beauty, so he decides. They are now kind of like friends. But what kind of friend will Suda be if he forcibly drags Aphrodite to his company of foreign girls? Rubbing his cheeks, he realizes. He got a bit carried away, so now he will have to think about it. Aphrodite and Suda slowly move along the road. The girl strangely asks the young man how much farther to the city. Suddenly the goddess turns to the youth. She says that she wants to be carried in a capsule. The boy says that, as far as he remembers, the goddess did not like being inside him, and the girl replies, "It is more comfortable to move in the bag because inside it is impossible to get hungry and there is no stress at all. Moreover, the capsule can restore all its parameters and has a healing effect." Suda is shocked by the power of the capsule. Aphrodite adds that the capsule also protects against the curse placed on the gods who descended to earth. Suda asks in surprise about the curse the girl mentioned. She said, "The powers of the gods act only in the sky." Aphrodite agrees and adds that there is no need to stomp feet in the ball capsule, and when they reach the city, Suda will call her. As soon as the girl moved into the capsule, she asks the boy to be careful with the ball. Suda looked at the capsule and called the goddess very cunning. After some time, Aphrodite is sleeping a deep sleep, and Suda tries to wake her up. As soon as the girl opens her eyes, a darkness of goblins appears before her. In a moment, she exits the capsule and asks Suda if he really gathered more goblins. The young man replies that it is all true, he caught them on the way along the path. So now there are about 37 creatures together in the capsule. Then he distracts the goddess and asks her to look the other way. They have reached the city. Reading the signpost, Suda learns that this city is called the Trading City of St. Bell. And he is surprised. He had no problem reading unfamiliar symbols. Aphrodite says that Suda understood everything correctly because everyone who arrives from another world is given the ability to understand and read the local language. Then the boy looks around and sees a goblin with a box, orcs who are working, and is amazed that monsters are used as labor force. Then he notices a stone turtle. It is also working. He asks the goddess if the turtle is a means of transportation, and the girl replies that it is possible. Aphrodite says that Suda is very mistaken if he thinks. Since the girl is a goddess, she must know everything, because for the first time in so many years she has descended to the earth. The young man responds to her sympathetically, but in his mind he wonders, what is the point of all this pomp and whether the goddess is capable of anything at all? He decides to look at her profile once more. He sees, apart from vitality, everything looks too sad. Then he asks the girl why her skill panel shows unknown. The girl replies, because of the concealment skill they are not visible. She explains thanks to this others cannot see her skills. This is the ability she has. Suda clenches her fist and says that she is probably a goddess since she has such an incredible talent. Then he thinks even if that girl is worthless she is still a goddess. And if Aphrodite has enough useful skills they will all live here happily together. The girl quietly giggles. Then Suda asks why the girl suddenly started looking away. The girl, closing her eyes, says that due to curse most of her skills are blocked. So the young man's words their high expectations are wrong. The young man sighs heavily and says he expected such a turn of events. He thinks, if the gods could show their power in this world, there would be no need to send foreigners here. The girl awkwardly says that she really cannot use her power here, and her skills do not work here either. She asks the young man if he will leave her because she is incapable of anything. The young man silently turns to Haran. The girl shudders. She suddenly lunges at him and demands an answer. She begs him not to go, leaving her to a certain death. The girl also threatens him with a curse and says that he will end up in hell. The youth shyly shouts that he will not abandon the goddess, but instead asks her to leave him alone. He understands that he must not only take care of himself but also look after Aphrodite. First you need to find a job because to have something to eat, a roof over your head, clothes, and to support the armed forces, money is needed. And that means you need to get to one very important place. The young man says that if you need a job in another world, look for it in the Adventurers Guild. In the Adventurers Guild, life is bustling and everyone is whispering eagerly, glancing in one direction at the couple who just entered the building. It was Aphrodite and Suda. The girl clings to the boy and he does not understand what she is doing. The girl asks the young man to look back and asks if he sees at least one person who is not looking at them. The boy sighs and says that he is in a school uniform and the girl is in heavenly attire, so that is exactly how they will be seen. Everyone starts whispering because they saw an incredibly attractive girl. Suda understands the matter is not about him and the girl, only about Aphrodite's attractiveness. He decides to take everything into his own hands. Suddenly someone greets them and asks if they are travelers. The one who came to visit her was Chloe Grace from the Katsi family. She was 18 years old. Suda notices that she has cat ears. He looks at her with admiration and in his thoughts calls her a beautiful foreign girl who comes to him in dreams. He wants her in his capsule. But behind his back, Aphrodite turns to him in anger and asks the young man what he is thinking about right now. Chloe asks the couple if she can help them with anything. Suda replies that they are looking for work. Chloe immediately understands this is their first visit to the guild. The boy says that he has just arrived in the city and Chloe immediately offers to register them. She hands them a sheet of paper and asks them to write their name. The boy writes his name in an unfamiliar language and then suddenly realizes he can not only read, he can also write. After some time, he receives his first guild adventure card. In the guild, this card is extremely important, so it must be kept safe. Chloe says that since they are newcomers to the guild, she is obliged to teach them. The Adventurers Guild is an organization where travelers take on quests and complete tasks received from the government and private individuals. Quests vary widely, from clearing out monsters to searching for lost kittens. If travelers have good results and a high rank, they will be able to receive more quests. Suda asks Chloe what she needs to do to raise her rank. The girl smiles and says that you just need to be useful to the guild, and your rank will rise on its own. Aphrodite notes that this condition is rather vague. Suda realizes, even if he successfully completes the work but the guild administration does not like him, career advancement may be postponed forever. Chloe interrupts his thoughts and points to the guild's bulletin board. She explains that the board has announcements with requests for orders. Adventurers need to take their first task, so she asks Suda to choose the one he likes. The boy stands and looks at the bulletin board. He marks 3 best options. Then he turns to Chloe and asks how he will prove that he defeated this or that monster. The girl replies that Sudi needs to bring some part of the monster's body. For example, if it was a wolf, then he must bring a wolf's fang. Suda understands. It will be more beneficial for him to befriend any monsters encountered on the way, so he takes on the quest to find healing plants. Quest successfully accepted. Chloe says that according to the quest booklet, beginners have the right to a gift called the Newbie's Kit. Suda thanks Chloe. They head to the guild, and the boy says that this is a real guild at least because of how they support beginners. Then she asks where they are going and why not look around near the city. Suda replies that it can be here too, but they need to find a more secluded and deeper spot. Aphrodite does not understand why. The boy explains that they will release goblins to gather herbs, but if someone notices them, there will be trouble, so Suda does not want other adventurers to kill their goblin comrades. Aphrodite agrees with the boy. She notes that the idea is generally good, but she is tired of walking, so she asks to stop in the capsule and rolls there. Suda says that it is time for him to start. She activates the capsule, and before he appears, a squad of small goblins jumps out in front of him. Suda thinks to himself, Here it is, the moment his little army of 37 goblins against one goddess. He notes that he had to work hard to gather such a number of goblins. He is distracted, and he orders the goblins to listen to him. He shows the goblins a picture in the book and says that they need to collect what is depicted there, medicinal herbs. As soon as the goblins find it, they must bring it to the roots of the nearby standing tree. He also orders, if they encounter anyone other than a young man, they must flee and not engage in battle. Suda gives the order and the goblins begin to carry out the task. He thinks that he poured all his energy into this speech and hopes that the goblins understood him. It seems to him that something is wrong with this, and gathering everything alone is not the best option, so he will quickly deal with the goblin army. A small goblin began to collect herbs, but something very creepy and dark was watching him from the bushes. After some time, a huge pile of healing herbs appeared next to the tree. Suda praised the monsters. Most of the goblins had already returned, but the young men, after 2 hours of searching, did not come across a single plant, and it seemed that intuition played the main role in this game. Suda looks at the capsule and thinks that he has caught 15 more new goblins, so the result can be considered good. He puts all the goblins back into the capsule and says that it is time to finish, but not all the goblins have returned. Suddenly, he hears someone fighting in the bushes like wrestlers competing. They turned out to be a fierce pack of wolves. Looking at the jaw of one of the wolves, Suda realizes they destroyed those little goblins that were still left. The hero suddenly becomes very serious and tells himself that the wolves should not expect mercy. The wolves closed the circle around the boy. There are 5 of them. Suda tries to estimate his chances in this situation, but he is still outnumbered. He clenches the capsule with the ball. He calls the small goblins to battle. Watching the battle, Suda realizes wolves will prove stronger than goblins, but goblins are much craftier than wolves. In this case, the chances of victory for both sides are roughly equal. He throws the capsule with the ball to one of the wolves. Since there are more goblins than wolves, the majority will win. And at the same time, when he caught 5 wolves, he thinks that if they meet even more goblins, they will have to call the wolves and give them to the goblins. Aphrodite drags the sack and starts shouting that she has had enough already. Why should a goddess carry anything? Suda says there's nothing to be done. If they leave it to the goblins, they will be noticed closer to the city. Suda will also say he has added a considerable amount to the collection, but for some reason the level remains the same. But he managed to acquire a new skill, monster crossbreeding. He read the skill requirements and understood the number of caught creatures affects the skills. He concludes that breeding is a skill he can use to create new monsters. The young man decides to test this skill in the evening. After some time in the Adventurers Guild, Aphrodite and Sudi were awarded 40,000 call. The young man thanks Chloe for the reward, and the girl only enthusiastically shouts that Suda is unparalleled. She says that the young man and the goddess completed the task in just half a day. They say that for a beginner, finding even one plant in a day is already a great success. The young man scratches the back of his head and says that there is nothing difficult here. Moreover, he did not collect it himself, but compliments from such a beautiful girl warm his chest. After some time, leaving the guild, Suda asks Aphrodite how much money they have approximately in Japanese yen. The girl replies, for one call they pay a little more than 1 yen. Suda asked in surprise if it was true that they earned more than 40,000 yen in half a day. Aphrodite confirmed this and said that it was too much for such a man. The young man suggested finding a hotel. After a while, Aphrodite is already standing there and is simply horrified. She asks Suda which shelter he dug up and why he could not find a better hotel. Sujor rented him a room for 4,000 call per day plus 2 dishes daily. The young man replies that they have a roof over their heads in a separate room, so why is that not enough for a goddess? And now they have little money, they still need to feed the monsters. The goddess agrees with the young man and says she will go into the capsule. Entering inside, she wishes the hero good night, and Suda wonders how much sleep the goddess had today. Sitting on the bed, Suda says that the bed is ready, the monsters are fed. It's time to move on to testing the new skill monster crossbreeding. In a moment, Suda sits in complete confusion. He just stumbled upon an unexpected discovery and now looks at the system messages, where it is directly said that you can also pass through Aphrodite. Suda says if he crosses her with a goblin, everything will work out. He wants to check, but decides to refrain and chooses the goblin. Then he has to choose a creature to be spent. The young man decides to take the wolf, but such a combination is impossible. The youth understands. You cannot cross a goblin with a wolf, so there is only one option to cross a goblin with a goblin. He sees, if you cross a goblin with a goblin, an elite goblin will appear in the world with a bunch of interesting traits and skills. The elite goblin's stats will increase, and the wolf will no longer be able to catch him. The court also notes that elite goblins can be combined with each other. If elite goblins are combined, they will produce a goblin knight, but the court has a limited number of monsters, so it must wisely use their merging and upgrading. In 20 minutes, the boy managed to create 1 elite and 10 goblin knights from 42 ordinary goblins. The goblin's equipment and appearance also changed, so it can be said An elite goblin is a brave novice, and a goblin knight is a hardened leader. The court thinks that goblins do not level up beyond the knight level, and it turns out, he currently has the strongest army. He orders the goblins be tomorrow and wishes that new victories come with them. At that moment deep at night, a young, beautiful girl was rushing through the dark forest. She was running away from a pack of evil men who were trying to catch her. The girl was running through in her head what to do next. She understood, now everything looks as if it will change for good. The man turns to his friend and says that if this girl runs away, someone named Bakraha will kill them. The friend does not understand why the potion does not work on the girl, and he replies that there is no other way. He yells at his colleagues and says that if they damage the valuable cargo, everyone will get into serious troubling than they will have to. And it's better this way than to release her from captivity, so he orders everyone to shoot. They aimed arrows at the girl. In a moment, an arrow hits the girl right in the shoulder. Suddenly she stumbles and falls straight off the cliff. She calls upon a mighty demon to save her. The goddess Aphrodite slowly follows the main hero and decides to ask where he is heading, because the Casella forest is in a completely different direction. Suda replied that the Casella forest is indeed in another direction, but first he needs to get to one place. That is to a trading shop licensed by the Adventurers Guild, called Silver Shield. Suda learned about this shop from Chloe. Thanks to the guild's license, travelers are exempt from paying customs duties on imported goods, so prices are affordable and heroes can buy everything they need. Suda and Aphrodite meet a man named Edgar Martin. He welcomes the guests and offers them to buy something. Suda says that first he needs some things. Edgar insists that the couple is dressed as if they put on the first thing they saw. He asks the clients to follow him. Aphrodite turns to Suda and asks if she can also buy new clothes for herself. Suda replies that her current outfit attracts too much attention, so she needs new ones. The goddess Aphrodite begins to shine with joy. She says that this is the first time she is buying clothes for herself. She adds, in the sky, only regulated attire can be worn. Suda does not understand and thinks that the world cannot be divided in half if gods are allowed ordinary things. But looking at Aphrodite, he sees that she is happy, and even in the shop, Aphrodite behaves like an ordinary girl. The conversation is interrupted by Edgar Martin, who introduces the equipment department as the buyer. He shows the adventurer's outfit a frink, and says that he can recommend this product, just the thing for Suda and Aphrodite. Suda sees the price of these clothes and says he likes them very much, also noting there are different designs for men and women. He asks Aphrodite if she likes these clothes. The girl begins to frown and says that these clothes are junk for commoners. She shows Suda a witch costume from E-Class Dancer and says she likes it. Suda starts sweating and thinks, this costume is too flashy and its price is 10 times higher than the previous ones. He shouts at Aphrodite, saying that they buy clothes so strangers won't stare and to avoid attracting attention. The girl replies that this has nothing to do with clothes, and as the goddess of beauty, she will not compromise on her appearance. Suda realizes only one thing remains to try giving her a small compliment. He says that silly Dai is so charming that ordinary clothes cannot hide all her beauty. Looking at the girl, Suda notices her embarrassed face. The girl covers her face with her hands and repeats Suda's words about her being charming. Suda does not understand why Aphrodite is so embarrassed. He says, do beauties like Dai never get tired of such compliments? The girl turns around and says she was not embarrassed at all. She adds that she did not expect this from Suda, so everything sounded very strange and she got scared. She clarifies the connection between gods and humans is weak, so she has never heard such words from men. Suda finds this unexpected. She is the goddess of beauty, so men should shower her with compliments. The girl says that nothing can be done. Suda insists so much that she is ready to compromise. After some time, when Aphrodite has already changed clothes, she asks Suda if she really looks too simple in these things. The young man replies that this outfit suits her very well. Aphrodite looked at the young man and said that he also looks wonderful. She finally felt that she was able to come to terms with this world. Suda did not even think that the clothes would fit so comfortably. Cheap but high quality, so this purchase can be considered a successful step. He tells Dai to leave the package and head to Casella Forest. Aphrodite replies that she will also help today. After some time in the forest, Suda orders the goblins to listen to him. Today they are doing the same as yesterday, gathering medicinal plants. The goblins are about to start the task, and Suda thinks, due to the crossbreeding of goblins there are fewer of them, but wolves will no longer devour them. The young man turns to Aphrodite and suggests she also gather healing herbs and comrades. After some time, Aphrodite returns to Suda. The boy turns around and sees she is sitting on the ground. The girl says she wants to rest because she is tired. The boy understands the lazy side of the goddess has returned again. Suda says that they have only just started, but if Diaz gets too tired, she can return back to the capsule. The girl turns sideways and says she does not see any healing flowers, but suddenly notices something is dripping from above. Suddenly, Aphrodite started screaming for Suda to look at the tree. The young man raises his eyes and sees the girl on a branch of a large tree. An arrow is sticking in her shoulder. Suda tried to understand how the girl ended up there at all. Raising his gaze, he decided she had fallen from the cliff and in any case she needed to be saved. He decided that the goblins had not yet returned from the mission, so the hero would have to climb the tree. He began to carry out the task, and the goddess Aphrodite supported him from below. Having taken the wounded girl down from the tree, Suda realized this was too difficult. Examining her, he saw she had a serious wound in her shoulder, and she had not just fallen from the cliff. An arrow was sticking out of her shoulder. He carefully laid her on the ground and activated the skill Piercing Eye. Thanks to this ability, he learned that the girl's name was Caroline Barton. She was 372 years old and exhausted to the limit. Suda wondered if there was a reason why such a beautiful girl wore a maid's uniform. Noticing her age, he was horrified. The girl looked younger than 20. The goddess Aphrodite, leaning closer, said that the girl was a vampire demon. Demons are a general name for all those who 300 years ago became allies of a powerful demon. Once demons, endowed with incredible power, enslaved humans, and Aphrodite learned that they even threatened the gods. Suda looked at the girl in surprise and asked how the demon ended up in the forest. Dai replied that as far as she knew, when the powerful demon died, the other demons lost all their power, and since then they have been hiding from humans. The goddess Aphrodite, looking at the girl, shook her head sadly and said that she was seriously wounded. If left alone, she would die in less than an hour. Suda began to shout and asked the girl if she could be saved by the divine power possessed by Aphrodite, but she replied that it was simply impossible. Earlier she could heal wounds with magic, but now she had no magical power at all, but there was one way to save the girl. The bullet capsule can restore health. By the way, Aphrodite had already mentioned this. In general, monster hunters are not capable of taming vampires. But with full dominance, Suda will be able to save this girl's life. Now everything depends on whether Suda decides if this girl will live, so the choice is really tough. The young man looks at his spherical capsule and thinks that the choice is actually incredibly difficult. It seems to him that simply taking over the life of an unknown girl is a terribly heavy feeling of guilt. But still, he has to do it. He touches the girl's ball capsule, and it flashes with bright light. Later, he notices the name Caroline in the profile column. Finally, for the first time since he came to this world, his level has increased. It seems vampires do not give that many experience points. He looks at the spherical capsule and cannot understand who this girl really is and what could have happened to her. Honestly, he still hasn't realized it. What really happened? And he definitely knows he caught a very cute vampire girl. After 3 hours, the young man examines the tree and sees a huge amount of medicinal herbs. He says that the goblins gathered much more this time than last time. But despite the fact that the goblins do not show fatigue, their work speed is clearly dropping. And then Suda realizes they have gathered almost all the healing plants in this forest. He understands that there is no point in continuing to work, so he decides to end it and stop. He thanks the goblins and asks them to return to the capsule. The young man is distracted by the goddess Aphrodite, who says her time has come. She continues to mock, saying that Suda can do nothing without her. The young man directs a questioning look at the goddess. The girl presses her hands on her hips and says to the young man, if he bows before her, then maybe today she will help him carry the loot. Suda looks at the girl with irritation and thinks, despite everything, even with Aphrodite they will not manage to take all these healing herbs, and if they use goblins they will definitely be noticed. The girl begins loudly saying that the young man should call her the most beautiful lady Aphrodite, the goddess whose beauty eclipses the sun, and he also needs to hit his forehead on the ground and bow. Here Suda realizes, absolute domination, the conquered nation of all living beings. In other words, he can capture any natural objects. He decides to try to use the ball capsule. Aphrodite does not understand what the young man wants to do. In a moment, the healing herbs flare up, and they are placed into the capsule. Suda is happy because he managed to carry out his plan. He realizes that, it seems, he has no limits at all. Aphrodite stands in panic and watches. He says that Suda understood everything correctly, so she teased him like that. The young man says, such a gentle and kind girl cannot speak of such dirty things. Dai says, Suda understood correctly. She sees how he grows before her eyes. The young man says that since he has grown, the girl has fewer and fewer matters left. He is going to say goodbye to her. Aphrodite rushes at Suda and asks for forgiveness for going too far. She also says that she sincerely helped him before this adventure from the bottom of her heart, and asks the young man not to leave her. Later, at the Adventurers Guild Harbor, Chloe places a huge sack before Suda and Aphrodite, and says that their reward for today is 64,000 coal. He calls Suda a true master of wonders, and everyone nearby now turns their gaze to him in D. They whisper about this newcomer, who he is. Someone remembers him as the guy who registered yesterday as an adventurer along with a very beautiful girl. He was remembered because of the strange clothes he appeared in. The young man thinks they really attracted attention, and there is almost no healing herb left in the forest, so he decides, tomorrow they will take on another task. On the way to the inn, Suda and Aphrodite are distracted by a little girl. She offers them a tasty apple. Suda looks at her and estimates she is about 7 years old. In this world, even such a small thing has to work. Aphrodite says she is hungry, so she suggests buying an apple. Suda kneels and asks the girl for 10 apples. They release a bag with apples and thank each other. Returning home, Suda and Aphrodite enjoyed juicy apples. The young man thinks they are kind of the same as on Earth, but in taste deeper, richer. He also notices that this is the first sweet food since he came here. Someone from the side calls out to Aphrodite and Suda and demands that they stop. It was Bakraja Ackerman. He was 37 years old. He looked like a fierce and cruel man. The locals recognized him and called him Lord. No one understood why he came here. The man extends to Suda and Aphrodite a sheet with a girl drawn on it and asks if the young men recognize her. Aphrodite and Suda recognize the portrait as Caroline. It was she whom Suda recently placed in a capsule. Suda tried to find out why these men needed Carolina. Bakresh cut off his thoughts and asked why the young man was silent and if he knew anything. Suda replied that he had no idea who this girl was and why all these people were interested in her. One of Bakaj's supporters exploded with indignation at the young man's tone and declared that he dared not speak to his master like that. He said that Bakraja Ackerman was the fourth largest slave trader in St. Bell. Sutter replied that he now understood everything, but in his head it was spinning. He understood nothing. Bakraj's assistant said that if the young man showed disrespect again, he would lose his worthless and miserable life. Then he declared, despite the fact that this girl from the postcard was their purchased product, this swindler got it into his head to run away from them and eventually managed to escape. That was the thought. The picture in his head was becoming clearer. Caroline did not want to be enslaved by these people and ran away. During the escape, she was wounded and fell off a cliff. Then he said he would return her for a reward. Bakroja Ackerman and his mercenaries turned away and laughed, loudly declaring that Suda was also involved in slavery, allegedly. The goddess Aphrodite awkwardly said that she had some disgusting premonition. Witnesses of this commotion approached the young man and the girl and said that this idea would actually destroy them. If Lord Bakray caught them, something terrible would happen. Suda did not understand what they were talking about. The man asked him if he knew about Mr. Baksheg, and the contender replied that he and Aphrodite had just arrived in the city. The man decided to tell them about Baksheg, but asked them to keep silent. They say he spends his whole life in dirty pleasures with slaves. At the same time, hundreds of slaves are brutally killed. If he drags Suda to the estate and makes a contract to own you, you can forget about life. Suda decided that the same thing had happened to Caroline, so she decided not to get involved in this. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the scream of Bakraj Ackerman. The man lunged with a scream at the little girl who had recently sold apples to Suda. He said the girl had no right to display apples there without permission to sell. Suda recognized in her the apple seller from the same scene. Meanwhile, Bakreka approached the girl with a terrible smile and grabbed her. He said that bad girls must be punished. He grabbed her by the hand and pulled her along, ordered her to follow, and promised to teach her a lesson at home. Suddenly, someone from the side called out to him. It was Suda. The boy asked by what right the man acted so. He used force against children, a disgraceful act for an adult. In his thoughts, he had already decided not to interfere in this dispute, yet he still did this foolish thing because he had no other choice. His soul seemed to be turned inside out. Bakasha Akraman glared ominously at the young man and said that these were the same adventurers again. He began shouting, asking if the young man had any complaints. Aphrodite placed her hands on the shoulders of the little girl. Suda thought he had only one complaint. Enslaving little girls is allowed only in the 2D world because girls like Bakria should exist only in manga. The man was already furious. How dare he remain silent and not answer? He draws his sword. Aphrodite begins to say his name. The man drew his blade, seething with death for Suda, and lunged straight at him. The situation was extremely critical. The man was rushing straight at Sudu. The goddess Aphrodite closed her eyes and held the little girl close to herself. Panic overwhelmed everyone around. Suddenly something began to shine brightly. And the Bakurai blade stopped the goblin that climbed out of the ball capsule. Suda held it right behind his back. Bakracha understood that Suda is a monster Tamer, but does that change anything? He easily knocks the sword out of the goblin's hands and strikes him on the armor. Suda realized the man moves very skillfully, although he looks clumsy. Bakrashak said he would make the Beastmaster regret resisting his will and ordered his subordinates to surround the young man. Everyone around scattered to avoid becoming victims of the fight. Suda looked at his ball capsule and told the goblins, their job is to protect all defenseless people. In an instant, about a dozen goblin knights appeared next to him ready to rush into battle. Bakria Ackerman was amazed by such a number of goblins and said that this simply cannot be. Suda had already given the order that the enemy was scared, so it was a great chance for the goblins to start the attack. Someone was very surprised that the goblins have weapons made of wood. Suda decided that they could become a promising army as soon as he saw how easily they dealt with people. Later, everyone was defeated and broken, but suddenly someone called out to Suthu from behind. It was Bakarja Ackerman. He defeated Aphrodite and grabbed the girl. The man shouted and gave Suda a choice. Either his army retreats and he follows orders, or he will hurt this little girl very badly. The girl cried and called Siu for her brother, but Krasha wondered why the boy was standing there silently. Suda said he understood everything and all that he initially asked to gather monsters, he would do himself, throwing the ball capsule directly at Bakraju Ackerman. The man caught the capsule and wondered what this strange thing was. Meanwhile, Suda with a bloody grin declared that this man had already been captured. Suddenly a spherical capsule flashed and along with it flashed Bakrad Jokerman. He became scared. He did not understand what was happening and what kind of light was enveloping his body. Suda caught the capsule with the ball and looked inside. There sat a miniature Bakraja Ackerman. The man did not understand where he was and asked to be released. The young man replied that he deserved it. He addressed the man as uncle and asked him to fall asleep and not wake up until he gave the order. Bakraja did not hear the command, but his body had already begun to go numb. In a moment he was already asleep inside the capsule. Looking around, Suda decided that the plot development had become too strange, and the townspeople should have long since fled. He approached a little girl and asked if she was all right. The girl said everything was fine, took Suda's hand and thanked him for saving her. Suda said goodbye to the girl and decided that she was fine, but again he was overwhelmed by the feeling. His ability for absolute submission depending on the intention could become a dangerous weapon. If used carelessly, it could disrupt the harmony of the universe. The young man's thoughts were interrupted by the goddess Aphrodite. The girl blushed awkwardly and said she did not want to say such things, but Suda should know. He was extraordinarily handsome today. The young man was confused and froze with surprise. He said he could not believe his own ears because Aphrodite was not capable of such flattering words. The girl suddenly left and hurried away. Suda laughed, picking up her words, then added that they would go look for a hotel. After some time, the heroes came across a hotel. Today, thanks to the goblins, they earned a little more than Suda expected, but they took a room almost twice as expensive as yesterday. Yet the young man wanted to bathe so much that he had to splurge. He also captured 18 goblins and improved them, thus significantly increasing his combat power. This can be considered an excellent result. But not everything is so smooth. The capsule healed the wounds of the demoness Caroline Barton, but she still cannot come to her senses. Suddenly the girl utters some roaring moo. Suda understands she has regained consciousness. The girl opened her eyes and whispered something about a mighty demon. Suda says embarrassedly that it seems the girl has confused him with someone else. The girl finally comes to her senses, jumps out of bed, and says that she cannot be forgiven because she said it unconsciously. She looks around and asks where they are. Suda explains, now they are in an inn in St. Bell. He adds that they found her wounded in the forest, so they took her with them. Caroline says she remembers everything very vaguely, but asks if it was Suda who saved her when she was hanging on a tree. Her vision is blurry, but she remembers everything in general. She asks him to convey her thanks, but the boy says it is not worth it. The girl says she forgot to introduce herself. Her name is Caroline Barton, and if the young man wants, he can just call her Carly, because close people can call her that. Then she asks the boy's name. The hero introduces himself, Kazuhaya Suda. Then she calls Suda Lord and asks him to convey her thanks on her behalf, obtaining his consent. Suda did not understand why the girl was so eager to convey her gratitude to him. She apologized for her impudence. She says that she was brought here as a slave, but humanity blossomed. It gained strength and people drove demons out of their homes. The demons had to hide, and if any of them were caught, they were immediately sold to the nobility. But the girl had nowhere to go. She screamed, saying that if Suda doesn't mind, she can join him and let Suda help him on his life journey. The young man says that it's not necessary, so he suggests hiring her as a maid or something like that. Caroline replies that any role suits her. She says she talks too much, but her combat skills are top-notch, and she is confident in them. And if Suda allows her to join his Aphrodite adventures, she will be very useful to them. Also, she can help them earn money. Suda looked at Caroline's stats and said that her words can be trusted. Her indicators are very high. Her skills, fire, wind, water, and dark magic are at the highest level, and light is at the medium level. Moreover, if Caroline stays alone, she will probably get into trouble again, so Suda has no choice, he has to agree. He says he sees no reason to refuse help. She thanks the young man, calling him her master. Suda looks surprised. She called him master. The girl explained that he has already become her master, so she will speak that way. She asked if it sounds strange. The boy replied no. His face turned red, and he said that it's not strange at all, so from now on she must always call him her master. He thought, good that the girl called him master, then he doesn't have to pay her for it. Then Caroline calls Suda Lord and says, if he wants the girl to do something for him, anything, then he should say it directly. If Suda has an order, the girl will obey everything. The young man asks, is that all? The girl approaches and says that since the master saved her life, her soul now completely belongs to the master. She asks permission to become dust for Suda. The young man thinks, if you imagine it exactly like that, then this is his best chance. On the bed, a maid with silver hair and crimson eyes ready for anything, and as soon as he realized this, everything inside Suda shudders, twists inside out. Suddenly, Aphrodite enters the room in a robe. The girl smiles and says she freed the bathroom. Suda shouts and asks why she came out dressed so simply. Aphrodite asks, looking at Carolina, if she has already woken up. At this time, Carolina, sitting on the bed, is horrified and begins to scream that the goddess has forgotten about herself here. Suda asks Carolina where she got the idea that Aphrodite is a goddess. The girl replies that gods and demons are two sides of the same whole, for they were created as opposites to each other. She senses his essence. The court thinks that this is probably true, and it also recalls, when Aphrodite saw Carly, she immediately said with absolute certainty that she was a demon. The court decides to introduce Carly to the goddess. It says, everything has already revealed itself, so the name of this girl is Aphrodite. Carly begins to scream and repeatedly repeats the name of the goddess again and again. She is horrified that one of the 12 Olympic gods ended up on Earth. She asks Aphrodite if she is not a high-ranking goddess of the sky. Aphrodite throws her hand on her thigh and says that Carly said everything correctly. Suda thought that the name D was often heard in video games, but had no idea that in this world she would become a famous person. He of course also believes that he managed to do it. It turns out he has both a goddess and a demoness in his hand, such that cannot exist together. But first he must confess to her that she has been accepted into the team to fight the mighty demon. After the story, Carly summarizes and says that Mr. Suda and the goddess are going to find and destroy the mighty demon. She says she understands everything and will do everything to help her master. Suda thanks her. Then she immediately changes the subject, apologizing in advance, and asks for permission to use the shower as well. Suda agrees, and Aphrodite says that she hasn't had time to turn on the hot water yet. Entering the bathroom, the girl realized she had encountered a strange person. After all, she had recently heard that a hero from another world would appear in this world, but had not heard a single word about the divine protection of the goddess. When she opened the water, she realized, in the whole world there is only one person with such power, the great mighty demon, Lord Ibris. Having the power to subjugate all demon kings, he ruthlessly established his rule in this world. When she first saw Lord Suda, the space around him reminded her of a mighty demon. As a servant, she had never been so devoted to anyone as to Master Ibris, and that is why she fell in love with him. Her intuition suggests Lord Suda is the reincarnated Lord Ibris. Sitting in the bath, she thought that the soul of a demon with such incredible power as his does not die after the body dies. And so it happened a famous seer prophesied the rebirth of the mighty demon. But it seems Lord Suda does not understand this. If the prophecy is true, very soon Lord Suda will gain the power of the mighty demon. Carly has no doubts he will become the ruler of Athelgid again. Laughing awkwardly, the girl does not understand what has come over her. She should not be so excited. She says that the day will come when she can serve Suda just like in her dreams. The next morning, Suda stood right in front of the Adventurers Guild. He was clutching a ball capsule and telling himself that there are more such capsules, so he needs to earn more money. Bakaraha Ackerman still feels it at her fingertips. Carolina will also live in the capsule for some time. It will be better for her. Entering the Adventurers Guild building, Suda realizes they have gathered almost all the medicinal plants, so he needs to decide what to do next. He overheard what other travelers were saying. They said that new quests were added to the board. The second confirmed, yesterday there was heavy rain over Zemalia Swamp, and because of this the monsters are still active. Suda approaches the board and focuses on what to take. Free tasks appear in the field of view: tame light mushrooms, tame amethyst slime, and collect mushrooms for medicinal nutrition. The young man decided that these tasks were simply wonderful. He noticed, all of them were located near the Zumalia Swamps, so he thought to take them all at once. So after 2 hours, Suda was already in the Zumalia Swamps. He raises the capsule with the ball to his face and says that there is no one nearby. Then Aphrodite and Carolina appeared next to the poison. The girl says that they can actually freely enter and exit the capsule. The girl thinks such a skill, all-consuming absolute domination, is already too much for an ordinary person. They were interrupted by Aphrodite. She screamed and pointed at a small mushroom rushing straight at them. It was a mushroom monster. The monster was called Light Mushroom. It was level 2 and its highest stat was Vitality. It also had the skill Paralyzing Powder. Suda approaches Carly and says that she wants to see her combat skills, so he asks if she minds if he assigns her the mushroom. He also asks her not to kill, only to extract its powers. The girl asks Suda to trust her, then heads to the mushroom. She thinks she must strike the master. The mushroom prepares to attack and sprays Paralyzing Powder. Suda thinks that he should not have been forced to fight without knowing the opponent's abilities. Carly clears her throat and mumbles to herself that she tastes mushrooms. With her magic, the girl blows out mushroom spores and they scatter in all directions. The little mushroom monster is truly terribly frightened by this. Suda noticed that Curly used wind magic to blow away the mushroom spores. Then the girl suddenly jumps up and it turns out she is right behind the mushroom monster. She swings her leg and then hits the mushroom, destroying it, and the girl awkwardly turns to the hero. The young guy shows a thumbs up and says that Curly's attack was simply incredible. He praises the girl and says that she is just super and can be relied upon in battle. The girl awkwardly thanks him for the compliment, and the goddess Aphrodite, standing aside, begins to frown. Suddenly she starts waving her hands and shouting to Suda that she herself will be the most useful and energetic in this team. Suda, throwing a sphere with a ball, says, thanks to their joint efforts, they will quickly handle all the tasks and return to the city. Suda says that this time their task is to collect medicinal mushrooms, so, as with medicinal plants, they will follow the goblin avalanche tactic. But this time they need to split into 3 teams. The Suda team, the DS team, and the Carly team. Then he says, giving orders to one person is not very effective, so if they can do it quickly, he would like to take on a few more monster clearings. If anything happens, he will need Carly and DS. Caroline says that the new orders do not bother her, and then, seeing a crowd of goblins, asks how many creatures Suda has tamed. Everything looks extremely impressive. The young man answers with a question. Does she really think that is so incredible? Then he says she is mistaken because she has nothing to compare it to. Carolina says that many think monster hunters with 3 creatures are already big people. Suda could not believe his ears. The goddess Aphrodite says that Suda eventually gained from her as many experience points as needed so that he would not give her any work. Suda and Carolina looked at Aphrodite with surprise and wondered why she had such a self-satisfied smile. Then the young man changed the subject and suggested dividing everything according to the plan. He tells the goblins that they must follow the orders of Aphrodite and Carolina, and if anything happens, protect them with all their might. After 10 minutes, one of the goblins brought mushrooms to Suda. The young man was stunned at how quickly everything was done. Looking at the capsule, he thought that he wanted to complete the collection of medicinal mushrooms, but first he had to do something else. Then he calls Bakraja Ackerman, a level 18 man, and his strongest attribute is physical strength. He has 3 skills, mastery in dagger killing, and also basic levels of fire and water magic. The man did not understand where he was. Suda recalled that he had instructed him to sleep curled up when he already had the chance to catch him, so it turns out that, for this man, everything is just beginning. Bakrash saw Suda and rushed at him to attack. Then the young man in response summoned a light mushroom creature to use its ability Paralyzing Powder. The mushroom used the ability directly on Bakrash. Bakraja Ackerman fell into a state of complete immobility. The young man realized the powder of this mushroom turned out to be even better than he expected. He reads information about the skill. The range of the paralyzing powder is about 2 meters, and for monster hunters like Suda this is quite enough. He decides to summon wolves just in case, and then thinks about what to do with this man. He has a limited number of tamed creatures, so there is no reason to keep Bakraja in a capsule. Having read the activation condition of his skill, Master of Daggers, to kill more than 10 people for fun, Suda understands. Such a person cannot be left alive. Bakraja begins to scream and asks Suda to kill him. It will be better than becoming a miserable errand boy. The young man understands. He is like a perverted knight surrounded by orcs. The young man understands. He cannot kill him and he cannot let him go. Then he finds a plan. He asks Bakrak to calm down, saying the young man has no business with people like him. The man asks if Suda will let him go. Bakria looks at Suda and does not understand what he desires. She says, he neither lets him go nor kills him, so what does he want? Suda replies that he wants to rebirth him. He chooses the wolf as the base creature, and Bakraja Ackerman becomes the material for creating the future being. Suddenly Bakraja Ackerman begins to glow. He screams, does not understand what Suda will do to him. Instead of Bakragi Ackerman, a D-class werewolf with physical strength appears. The distinctive feature of the fight is fast movements and claw strikes. He looks at the werewolf and wonders if werewolves can speak Japanese. He thinks the beast looks very cool. He orders the werewolf to give him his powen. The latter gladly obeys. Suda decides that the problem is already solved. It seems the werewolf follows all his commands. But he immediately realizes has created the strongest monster in his collection. Suda looks at the huge pile of mushrooms and realizes this is truly an impressive harvest. He understands that teamwork offers so many advantages, and perhaps goblins are exactly the kind that fully flourish when working in a group. Carolina says, turning to the owner, that she killed the light mushroom and as proof brought a piece of its body. Aphrodite shouts that she brought more materials. Suda thanked the girls. The young man thinks that he gave Dai and Curly another task. So now they can carry out the assignments at their own discretion immediately and in parallel, and this time they have a very big catch. Suddenly Carolina asks the owner how they will handle all this, because 3 people cannot manage it at the same time. Suda tells Carolina not to worry. He uses a ball capsule and transfers all the mushrooms there. Carolina says it is incredible and admires how Suda works with it. She also adds that she never doubted the master's abilities for a moment. Suda scratches the back of his head and says that every new reaction from Carolina makes him feel very uncomfortable. He thinks that his goddess is replacing him, but before he can make a reservation, he notices she is gone. Suddenly a scream sounded from the side. An amoeboid slug attacked Aphrodite. The monster was level 7 and class F high survivability but no skills. Suda realized the amoeboid slug grew over 2 meters tall, and by stats it was the strongest wild creature of all he had met so far. Meanwhile, the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, begged Suda to save her. The monster was all sticky and she became uneasy. Suda asks Aphrodite to wait a bit and he will save her right now. But contrary to all expectations, the amoeboid slug rejected the capsule with the ball that Suda had thrown at it. It was so unexpected that everyone was surprised. No one had ever hit the capsule, so Suda hadn't even thought about it. Therefore, hit does not mean hit. The young man tries to figure out what to do. The paralyzing powder from mushrooms won't reach this slug, and it might hit Aphrodite as well. Suddenly, Curly tells the young man to trust her, because with the strength of her legs she can easily reach him. Suda notices Carolina's confidence and thanks her. If she hits him even once, he will have one chance to ask the monster for the capsule. Suddenly, Aphrodite makes a very strange sound. Suda notices this and says that she is screaming incredibly strangely and asks if something happened to her. The girl says that this monster is going where it shouldn't. Suda immediately understood. The slug is trying to take Aphrodite's clothes. Apparently, it decided that these things interfere with it eating the girl. The young man apologizes to the goddess and shouts at the monster to do something terrible to her. While in his thoughts, he encourages him as much as he can. Carolina looked embarrassed at her master and thought that this cursed goddess of beauty had managed to conquer him. She slowly crawls up to the slug and gives him a chance to grab her. Then she, lowering her gaze embarrassedly, says she has no forgiveness because she was also taken captive. Suda tries to figure out what is going on in his head. He thinks that the slug cannot be strong enough to catch even Carolina with her level and characteristics. One day he suddenly realized it was not a fiction. She had just escaped and given herself to this monster, despite our resistance. Hearing her scream, he dismissed these thoughts because it simply could not be. The girl shyly said that the tentacles of this amoeboid slug are very sticky. She did not expect that. At some point, the monster took off Carolina's clothes. The young man thought that he had taken off his clothes again like a god. Suda began to watch what was happening and could not take his eyes off it, considering it all beautiful. He was torn from his thoughts by the scream of the goddess Aphrodite. She ordered the young man to quickly save her and Carolina. Curly asked the young man to save them as he wished. The young man stood on the ground, waking up, and thought about what to do next, because he could not just stand and stare. If he did not save his girls, the monster slug could eat them. In a moment he realized. All the tentacles of the amoeba-like slug were occupied. He was holding Caroline and Aphrodite with them. The young man again decides to throw a capsule with a ball at him. The object hits the target and successfully captures the sliga. Under the nose of Suda, amoebic slug was a level 1 water monster, stubborn, but with 0 skills. Feeling a solid support under their bodies, the girls calmly exhaled. Aphrodite was all sticky, but she was glad to be saved. Caroline crossed her arms and called the owner of Suda wonderful. Having reached the city, the young man held a spherical capsule in his hands and thought to himself that this military expedition turned out to be a generous gain for him. Aphrodite and Carolina completed all the quests. Suda caught 7 mushrooms and even obtained an amoebic slug. In the evening, he decides to try to crossbreed those creatures he caught. When he gets to the Adventurers Guild, it seems to him that his smile does not leave his face while Chloe praises him. After some time, the reward for the quest 76,000 coal was ready. Chloe told Suda that he was wonderful as always. Usually completing such a volume of work takes more than a year, but this young man gathered so much material at once. She had never seen anything like it. Suda scratches the back of his head and laughs. He says he does not deserve such praise. And he thinks to himself, Chloe has taken root in his soul because she always praises him and is so kind herself. The young man clears his throat and invites the girl to have dinner together in the evening, somewhere near the Adventurers Guild. But suddenly Chloe sharply tells Suda that she will agree some other time. Suda thinks to himself, both on Earth and in another world they are also strangers. It is very sad. In any case, the young man already has money, so he is going now to buy out the entire department store. Aphrodite and Carolina are waiting outside. They see how Suda is crying and are talking to each other. Suddenly, the young man turns around and asks Carolina if she needs anything bought. Because in her new life, there are probably many different needs. Sorry, don't be shy, tell him. Carolina begins to shine and thanks Suda. She agrees to his proposal and says she would be glad for comfortable clothes that are easy to move in because it is difficult in the servant's uniform. Suda agrees with this proposal. She also becomes a little embarrassed. Blushing, she asks the court to buy her spare clothes because right now she only has what she is wearing. The court clenches its hand into a fist and firmly, clearly says that he will have to choose this very carefully. Aphrodite intervenes and says that she also wants the same things. Suda recalls, yesterday she bought them for herself. And Aphrodite replies that a woman can never have too many clothes to change into. After some time, they reach the trading shop with a guild license called Silver Shield. They enter inside, followed by Aphrodite and Carolina. Before them appears a place where clothes are sold and where every item shines with beauty. Women's clothing in Adelheid is almost indistinguishable in design from what is made on Earth. Not long ago, Suda learned from the story of Mr. Edgar, the owner of a trading shop, that in Adelheid there is a material similar to rubber. It is easy to work with, and apparently, the history of women's clothing goes back many centuries. Overall, as a fan of clothing for little girls, there is something in this world that will pleasantly surprise Suda. He also clarifies, for now, classic clothing is his top priority. Aphrodite and Caroline are looking at goods in the shop windows. The goddess asks Caroline to take a closer look at one item and says it is very cute, but the demoness replies that it no longer suits her age. Suda approaches the girls to also look at the display. As he expected, Aphrodite chose a cute trinket in bright red, while Caroline, on the contrary, chose a wonderful shade of purple. Imagining the picture in his head, the young man realizes, it's hard to choose between super and awesome. Suddenly, Aphrodite notices a young man behind her. She starts yelling at him, asking why he followed them, and orders him to get out of the shop. Caroline says she doesn't care if he is here. A moment later, the young man was already standing right at the shop door. But nothing can be done, so he decided to go and see what was there. He remembers that he has goblin knights, but for some reason they run around with simple wooden sticks, so if they are given stronger weapons, they will most likely become more useful in battles. Suda calls the merchant in this weapon shop and asks if he has weapons suitable for beginners. The man raised his fist to his chin and thought. He said he has some weapons for novices but cannot recommend them to Suda. The young man did not understand why. The man says he does not have a specialized shop, so he only has a few types of weapons he is well acquainted with and even less those he can repair. He advises beginners to buy better weapons in a specialized shop. He also explains that many shops offer free repairs for a certain time after purchase. This surprises Suda. The man does not stop and says, if the young man wants, he can point out a weapon shop in St. Bell. After some time, Carolina and Aphrodite appear. Suda is eager to see Carolina's new look. She will wear it on her next mission. The girl bought an E-class ranger suit and F-class leather boots. She thought such things were very expensive, but Suda said not to worry about the price and even praised the girl for her good choice. While Suda was flying in the clouds, Aphrodite looked at the price tag of this costume and got angry. Because Carolina's clothes cost many times more, as much as 6 times. Suda says if the girl insists so much, next time he will buy her something new. Aphrodite was embarrassed and made the young man promise that next time they would also buy her a new costume. After some time, the group reached the last place for today, the armory, which Mr. Edgar had told them about. Suda decided that they had arrived, based on the route description. Suddenly, Aphrodite quietly whispered to Suda and hinted not to go to that store. Carolina also preferred to go to another one, not this one. The appearance of the shop was simply terrible. An old and cracked building, closed doors and windows covered with curtains. The shop was called Scarlet Blade Gun Shop, a creepy place to the bone. Suda even introduced the shop owner as a gloomy, eccentric uncle. But the shop was closed, so he decided to come another time. Suddenly, the shop doors opened and a cute little girl ran outside. It was CLO, Overlord, a gnome. She looked about 13 years old. She opened her eyes wide and greeted the bright sky, saying that they had not seen each other for so long. Suda, Aphrodite, and Carolina were amazed because a little girl came out to them. Suddenly, the girl notices that 3 people have arrived. She asks if they have already come to the store. Suda slowly asks if she is the owner by any chance. The girl answers that the guy hit the mark exactly. She runs the Scarlet Blade shop and her name is CL Overlord. The girl rubbed her cheek and, smiling, asked shyly what kind of weapons the clients were looking for. She clarified that she had finally sorted out that pile, so now she was ready to serve them. Suda was at a loss for words. He decided that this little girl, about 13 years old in appearance, was running the entire shop. Suddenly, Syl sharply opened her eyes and screamed in fear, addressing Suda as Mr. Adventurer. She, pointing at Aphrodite and Caroline, asked if those 2 girls had really come with a boy. She said it was like being doused with ice water. For the first time, she saw such charming guests, and she also called them incredible beauties. Carolina immediately blushed, and Aphrodite said that everything was decided. They will buy weapons at the Scarlet Blade shop. Suda said that Aphrodite had just suggested looking for another shop. The girl replied that it was a long time ago, so she didn't remember anything like that. She said that at first glance she was almost knocked off her feet by their beauty, so this little one was very promising. Aphrodite was sure that she understood blacksmithing. Suda did not understand why Carly and Dee had come here at all. Syl said welcome. She invited the clients to come in, not to rush, and to look around. Suda was stunned. From the outside, the shop looked damn creepy, but inside everything was clean and comfortably homely. He looked at the goods and thought that everything met his expectations. The retail shop had nothing to compete with such a rich, specialized store, but on the other hand, there was so much merchandise that it was overwhelming. Syl noticed Suda's awkwardness and said that she felt Mr. Adventurer was not yet experienced with weapons, so she offered her help and wanted to suggest something. Suda lit up with joy. But Suda hesitated for a moment and said that he did not need a weapon. After some time, a goblin stood in front of the village. She immediately understood the weapon was intended for goblin knights. Suda says that this means the seal has never seen tamers as clients there before. The girl replies that there were some, but not many weapons for monsters are rarely bought because not all monsters know how to use weapons. The young man recalls, among all the monsters he had seen, only goblin knights knew how to use weapons. He had never met in the city or in the forest a goblin, nor an elite goblin, nor a goblin knight. It seemed almost impossible to teach weapon skills and raise monsters until you had the ability to crossbreed monsters. Suda agrees with CL and suggests she look at something from the selection, so he asks to show something like a cheap one for beginners. CL accepts the request. After some time, the goblin held a bronze F-class sword. Adventurers often go on raids, so they need exactly a bronze sword. He also held a round F-class shield, light and convenient in the hand. The entire equipment cost 9,000 coal. Suda looks at his three goblins, one with a sword and shield, another with a spear, the third with a mace. And suddenly he realizes now they look exactly like knights. He also assumes, as soon as he can arm all the goblins like knights, he will have his own squad of invincibles. The young man understands. The price is not too high, so he tells CL that they will now check all the weapons and then buy 3 more shields. The girl thanks the young man with a smile. The young man puts everything inside a spherical capsule and says that tomorrow they will fight and check if the weapons suit the goblins. After payment, CL asks Suda for one last thing, a name for the business card so that future weapon repairs will be free. She also adds, if the weapon becomes dull, it should be brought to the shop. The girl smiles, hands Suda a business card, and says that Scarlet Blade Shop is always happy to see him. In the evening, Suda had already managed to get to his hotel. Aphrodite and Caroline were seated on the sofa. They just plopped down, and Suda sat on a chair and stretched. Finally, he could rest. The young man thought that their group had done a lot of things today, but his level hadn't increased at all until suddenly he noticed a new skill appeared: contact. The ability allows maintaining a conversation in the mind with captured targets within a radius of 50 meters from the trainer. He understands that this ability is similar to telepathy. He realizes, if this skill works, it will bring a lot of benefits, so he decides to apply it right now to Caroline and Aphrodite, who were resting on the bed. Suda says that he needs to focus his thoughts on Aphrodite and Caroline to test the new skill. He activates telepathy to warn Aphrodite and Caroline. He has mastered the new telepathy skill, and if they hear him, they should try to respond with their thoughts or with their voice as well. Aphrodite says in surprise that this cannot be, then asks if the voice in her head is really Suda's voice. Caroline is also shocked and says that this is simply incredible and that she is very impressed. Carly added that now they will be able to talk to the owner 24 hours a day. Suda suggested testing the contact skill in different ways, so he asked for help from Caroline and Aphrodite. Caroline agreed and Aphrodite said she had no choice. After some time, Suda noted, the skill itself and the contact in general is very clear. It turns out this is an incredibly useful skill. The main point of this ability is that without Suda's participation, his other combat monsters Aphrodite and Caroline cannot communicate with each other. Even despite this requirement, Suda still thinks that this skill is very cool, especially the fact that it can send commands even to those who are in a capsule. Goddess Aphrodite asks if everything is already finished. Suda says yes and thanks everyone for their help. The girl says that she is the first to take a shower, and Carolina replies that she will wash the laundry. Suda decides quickly to crossbreed monsters. Today he caught 8 light mushrooms and 2 amoebic slugs. He looks at what he can overcome and sees there is only one possible set: a light mushroom and an amoebic slug. He also noticed a skill that can be created, a paralyzing powder of confusion that drives the opponent into a state of sexual desire. Suda understands that he needs to confirm this skill immediately. He crosses a bright mushroom with an amoeba-like slime mold, causing a crazy mushroom. The young man notices that the mushroom has changed the color of its cap, and that's it. In every other way, it has not changed its appearance at all. The young man examines the new monster and thinks about how to conduct the experiment. If he orders the spores to disperse on the girl, it can be considered an evil deed committed by evil people. Suddenly he realized, if you order a mad mushroom to spread spores through contact, most likely the victim won't even realize that it is the work of Suda himself. Overall, the young man is confident this is the perfect crime. Suddenly the bathroom door opens slightly and out comes the goddess Aphrodite. The girl notices the new monster and says that he has a very cute pink hat. She even says that Suda has a very convenient talent for creating such creatures. You can make as many powerful monsters as you want, and the day when he defeats the mighty demon and she returns to heaven is even closer. Suda freezes in shock. This is the perfect moment. He uses a contact skill to transmit his thoughts to the mushroom so that it can apply his chaos powder. Suddenly the mushroom sprays spores directly at the goddess. The girl starts coughing and asks what kind of powder it is. Suddenly the pollen reaches the young man directly. He realizes the act was reckless because, apparently, the chaos powder has a larger area of effect than the paralyzing powder. Suddenly, Aphrodite grabs Suda by the shoulders, blushing, and throws him to the floor. The girl says that something is wrong with her, and she does not understand what is happening to her. Suda realizes his whole body is already burning and he cannot prevent it. The effect of the matte mushroom powder affected both Aphrodite and Sudi. The situation was extremely awkward, and now the young man cannot think clearly. He thought that Dee was actually a very attractive girl. Suddenly, Aphrodite began slowly reaching to the right directly toward Suda's face. She asked him to freeze for a minute. Suddenly, Carolina appeared in the room with a bucket of cold water. She poured all the water on Aphrodite, and a little fell on Suda, so the girl asked if the goddess and her master had come to their senses. After the goddess Aphrodite regained consciousness, she felt embarrassed and she blushed, shouting at Suda not to look at her. She bombarded with questions like, "What is even happening here?" The girl replied. Whatever is going on, Suda does not like her. She ran out, slamming the door behind her. Caroline thought in her head that this cunning cat wags her tail to her master and wanted to kill Aphrodite. The young man asked if Carolina was okay. The girl asked what the master wanted from her, and in her thoughts reproached herself for having to restrain her feelings. Suda did not understand what had just happened. As if through a contact skill, fragments of Carolina's thoughts were released. He did not expect this from this sweet girl. He said that now they know, cold water helps against the abilities of the mad mushroom. Caroline replied that when she lived in the village, they were often attacked by mad mushrooms and she knows how to resist them. Then she tells the master, if he wants to try new skills in the future, he should use her. Unlike Lady Aphrodite, Caroline continued, no matter how shy she was, she will not run away. Suda replied that he would think about it, but in his thoughts he had no idea why she needed it. He also thought, even though he disguised the attack order under a contract, it was clear that Carolina saw through his plan. He did not close his eyes until morning. He was afraid that all his thoughts would leak into the heads of Aphrodite and Caroline. And when he remembered Carly's creepy smile, he shuddered. The next day, the Travelers Guild was in a real uproar. Everyone buzzed about the funny task that appeared on the quest board. They promised a tidy sum, but someone whispered that in the afterlife this money would be useless. Suda enters the Adventurers Guild and notices a crowd of people near the notice board. On the board, they posted an announcement, Taka-Dragon. The reward is 3 million coal, required rank G class. Then Suda understood where such a crowd came from and decided to ask Chloe about everything. The girl explained that this quest appeared recently, and the information was brought by eyewitnesses who had been in Casella Forest. The target is a basilisk. It is an extremely dangerous predatory monster. They say it can breathe fire. Chloe advises Suda to prepare properly for this quest. Suda knows the basilisk can spit poison. Its gaze turns all living things to stone. But it seems that in this world it only uses fire breathing, and even so, there is still something to fear. After some time, Aphrodite asks why Suda did not take the quest. The young man replies that he realized it would take a lot of time, so he wants to head to the Zumalia swamp. The girl began to insist on this task because the reward is 3 million coal. She insists that this is their chance to earn a lot of money. Suda also confirmed. He himself came up with a very tempting offer. But such a high price hints, this quest is too dangerous. They want not only to take the risk but also to return alive because life is above all. Aphrodite gave a persistent look and said that this is exactly what the one who threw the capsule with the ball to the great goddess of beauty tells her. She adds, Suda is too cautious. Carolina interrupts her and says that when it comes to the basilisk, it is an evil monster that can easily destroy an entire village, and even a group of 10 adventurers cannot handle it. Aphrodite says that if so, then everything is clear and they will take on this quest some other time. She also mentions when the day will come when they can defeat the mighty demon. Suda's group hears a scream from afar. Someone is begging, save her. The boat immediately dashed toward the side from where the scream came. Aphrodite recognizes the voice and says it sounds like the girl from the gun shop. It was Seal who asked what the men were trying to do with her. He grabbed Seal's hand and told her to follow him, saying they would talk in his office. The court understands. This girl is being blackmailed and everyone pretends as if they see nothing. He is tormented by the thought what must happen for this world to become safe. The young man asks if Aphrodite and Caroline can wait a bit in the ball capsule because he fears it will be too troublesome there. The girls agree and say they leave everything to him. Later, Suda intervenes in the conversation and asks if the man has any problems. He clarifies who he is. Sayal recognizes Suda in the young man and asks for help. The man immediately starts shouting. He says he does not know who this boy is but warns do not interfere at the wrong time. The young man decides to himself, a man needs to calm down because rudeness will only worsen the situation. So he should be polite. He asks why they are talking like that and what happened to them. The man hissed and said that Suda was pressing too hard and that this noise was not worth his extra attention because he was just doing his job, collecting debts and showing the young man the loan agreement. Then he points to Seal and says that her father, who died, took a loan of 3 million coal and then disappeared into the shadows. Suda replies that she understands the situation but adds, the man does not think it will be very difficult to repay such a large sum at once. He points to the shop and says he advised Sil to sell the Masna shop to pay off the debt faster. Sil shouts that he will never do that. She says she took this photo thanks to her teacher, so she simply cannot give it away. The man replies, if so, then there is no other way only for CL to become a slave and pay off her debt with her body. The girl says she is ready to pay if the man breaks the debt into several months. She cannot pay the full amount at once. The man replies that he is tired of her and his job requires him to return everything in full. He threatens that he will not agree to her terms, and that if they had not missed a very expensive slave, they would have made a better deal and their company's affairs would have gone up from strength to strength. He also wonders where Bakraha is now in these difficult times. Suddenly, Suda recognizes this name. This is the same man he caught and then they crossed paths with a wolf. In the end, Suda realized, in all this fuss only he is to blame. According to this man, the male slave shop Plakwara G shop did not receive the money that was supposed to be taken from the sale of Caroline. It seems now the seal itself is in trouble because of this. In other words, everything happened because he decided to intervene and save Carly. He also turned Bakraja into a werewolf. It turns out he has to be responsible for himself, so the young man offers to pay off the debt to him instead of Seal. Suda looks like a traveler with poor equipment, so he won't be able to do anything. Suda knows raising 3 million coins for the mine is not so easy, but he has one way. As soon as he says this, a strange task that he encountered in the Adventurers Guild comes to mind. Suda asks the man to wait 3 days and he will definitely bring 3 million coal. The man says, it won't work. Why should they wait and what will they get from it? Suda put his hand in his pocket, pulled out some object and declared that this should convince the man. It turned out to be a coin. The young man said it was a deposit. If he breaks his promise, the man can keep the coin. The man smiles and says that then he will wait 3 days, but he really does not believe that it will change anything. The girl approaches Suda and hints that he does not have to pay her the debt. The boy tells Sil to leave it to him. He uses contact skill to get in touch with Aphrodite and Caroline, and tells them it's time to leave the head to Casella Forest. To defeat the basilisk means to bring them a pile of money. After some time in the Casella Forest, Sil went with them. She says that Suda is the mad Santa. Then she talks about basilisk and explains, this monster is very famous among blacksmiths. It has incredibly strong scales. They are used as material for elite armor worn by royal knights. This monster is stubborn. Even a group of adventurers has a hard time dealing with it. The young man replies that if she thinks so, she can wait in the city. Sil rumbles with anger and says that she could not have acted that way because it is a problem of hers and her teacher. And if she not only involved other people but also made others suffer, then she will not be able to look her teacher in the eye. Suda gets distracted and asks why little CL is running to the store alone, that is, where her teacher is now. CL replied that she herself did not know now. Her master was not only an excellent blacksmith but also a traveler. 2 years ago the master went to tame monsters and contact with him was lost. Suda says she understands everything but asks, let Sel not worry. Because he is extraordinarily strong and does not lose to any basilisk, Sayal was stunned by his words. The girl awkwardly apologizes and says that her words may seem harsh, but in her opinion Suda does not look that strong. It was a direct blade to the heart. Then the goddess Aphrodite intervenes in the conversation and says that Sil is absolutely right because he looks completely unreliable. But she wants CL to be calm. The goddess is an ally of Suda, the goddess of love and beauty Aphrodite. The girl places her hand on her chest and laughs. Sil starts screaming wildly because Aphrodite introduced herself as an Olympian goddess. The girl says that even though she is from a village, she won't be fooled by such a trick. Suda understands, the letter D is extremely famous. Aphrodite flared with anger. She needs to prove that she belongs to the gods. The girl frantically looks for a way to prove it and says, under her clothes is a seal very beautiful and she has a wonderful body. She also adds that her size is 3 and her measurements are 86, 53, 83. Sayal tries to find out how the girl learned about this. Aphrodite replied that only gods can do that and she has the eye of God. So having this ability, she can see through the seal of the color of its clothing. Sayal asks if it is true that the skill Eye of God is something available only to gods. Aphrodite says that everything is correct and that the color of the servant's clothing is white. The girl suddenly became embarrassed. She also adds that the seal should wear more or less nice clothes. The girl tries to make Aphrodite be silent and not say another word. The judge interrupts the conversation and orders them to wait. He also asks if it was Aphrodite who said that after she was cast onto Earth, she was cursed and can no longer use her abilities. The girl replies, although she said this, the Suda ball capsule has a powerful healing effect that gradually removes the curse, so in fact this treatment only recently came back to her. But still Suda notes, besides the size power 3, Aphrodite also saw the color of her clothes. Her skill is an advanced version of his insightful eye. The girl replies that the boy is right. The young man thought that he also wanted to master such skill. At that very moment, the girl replied, "If Suda wants to use her power, then let him now fall to his knees, kiss her feet, and beg, calling her Lady Aphrodite to grant him her power." Suda nervously giggles and says she will do it next time she gets a chance. But in her head, she keeps telling herself that she wants this skill desperately, even ready to kiss the boots of the goddess, because he is very interested in what color the girls in the city dress in. But if he does that, the girls around him will look at me like I am a terrible person. He covers his ears with his hands and thinks that from jealousy he is about to lose his mind. Carolina breaks the thoughts. She covers her mouth with her fist and says that today she is in black. The boy imagines the color black and quietly thanks her in his thoughts. Aphrodite changes the subject and asks if they will part ways this time. The youth replies no, who knows when the basilisk will catch up with them. Suda says the basilisk is too dangerous an opponent because it costs 3 million coal, so they need to be careful and stick together. Suddenly Suda hears a scuffle from the bushes. The next moment a pack of wolves jumps out of the bushes, 7 of them. Usually the boy would have time to catch them in a capsule, but now is a good moment to call the Goblin Knights. He calls the Goblin Knights to show off their new equipment. The goblins immediately put their new weapons into action: sword, spear, and mace. After some time, the young man scans the battlefield and sees. The new equipment is simply incredible, as the goblins dealt with the wolves in an instant. He thanks the goblins for their excellent work, and the monsters are happy because they were praised. Suddenly, the young man notices that one wolf survived. Suddenly, Carolina interrupts and asks the host if he objects. Can he leave this wolf with her? The young man replies that he doesn't care, but still asks why she needs it. The girl says, vampires need to drink animal blood from time to time, and wolf blood is very nutritious food for them. The girl says that he doesn't care, so he allows her to do as she pleases. Carolina thinks about the young man. Suddenly, everyone falls silent, and Suda asks why the girl is not drinking the wolf's blood. She awkwardly looks away and answers that, to be honest, she is a little embarrassed, so she asks to look away for a moment. Suda agrees and turns away. He recalls that the girl named the color of her clothes but was shy to show herself at the banquet. The young man decided that she was strange. At that moment, something appeared on the horizon. Carolina, noticing this creature, howled and screamed for the Sioux owner to look up. Suddenly, a basilisk falls from the sky, a Class B monster of level 24. It has very high stats, especially endurance and magic power, and among its skills is the ability to breathe fire. The young man stares at the sky in horror and notices the monster's prominent features. Suddenly, the monster releases a fiery breath. Suda tells the girls that it is too dangerous here, so they need to return to the ball capsule. Then he orders the Goblin Knights to return to safety. The goblins accept the order and lift the seal to lead her away. The boy squeezes the ball capsule and then throws it directly at the basilisk, calling his throw deadly. He thinks no matter how great his wealth is, if the ball hits him directly, he will absorb it. Suddenly, the basilisk raises an air current with its wings and knocks the capsule away. Aphrodite shouts at Suda not to do anything foolish, and Carolina shouts at him to run away at least once. The boy thinks it would be good for him to do this. But as soon as he turns his back to the basilisk, it will immediately kill him, so he needs to understand what exactly Suda should do now. Suddenly, the basilisk rushes past Suda, grabs the wolf's body, and flies upward. The young man, looking at the flying basilisk, realizes. At first, it wanted to drag away the wolf's corpse. This seemed like a relief to him. And as soon as Aphrodite and Caroline exited the capsule, the young man apologized to Carly, saying that the basilisk had stolen the girl's food. The girl replied that everything was fine and there was no need to worry. The main thing was that the owner was safe. Sooth tries to figure out how to defeat this monster. The difference in strength is too great. But suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by Carolina. She apologizes. She approaches the young man and says she feels something on the gentleman's left arm, probably blood. She asks him to allow her to take care of his wound. The boy did not even notice the injury. He looked at it and realized it happened exactly when he dodged the basilisk's strike. He notes that Carolina noticed the wound very quickly. The girl says it's nothing special. Vampires have a very good sense of the smell of blood, so she quickly found the source. The young man says it turns out the girl can smell the blood of the wolf that was just dragged away by the basilisk. The girl answers affirmatively, says she clearly remembers this smell, so she wonders if she can recognize it at a distance of 200 meters. Suda understands. This way they will be able to devise a tactic for the group, because thanks to Carolina's senses, they will determine the basilisk's lair location. He takes Caroline's hands and thanks her, saying he is happy because they have become friends. The girl blushed and could not utter a word. He turns to Aphrodite and says he wants their goddess to be as useful as Caroline. The girl flinches, then starts shouting that Suda allows himself this because she is also useful, and asks the young man to give her a task so she can prove herself. Suda folds his hands and says he has a very important matter he would like to entrust to the goddess, because it is not such a dangerous job for such a girl. She replies that the boy underestimates her. After all, she is a goddess, so there is no job she cannot handle. The girl says she will show everything she is capable of. Sudis barely smiles and says the girl gave her word. Then he turns to Sela and asks if she can do one thing for him. The girl agrees. Now they have everything needed for the operation to capture the basilisk. Suda's group reached the basilisk's lair, emerging in the form of a huge tree. Suda says the area stinks. He looked at the branches and realized the basilisk pierced corpses, impaling them on the branches. As far as he remembers, this was done back in the Middle Ages. He turns to the girls and says, "It's time to start preparing for the operation before the basilisk notices them." He orders Aphrodite to leave everything to her. After some time, Aphrodite was tied to a tree. She did not understand what this whole story meant. Suda asks if she didn't say she would do anything. Aphrodite starts shouting that it's true, but the guy didn't say he would use her as bait. She called Suda the embodiment of the devil. Seal didn't think the guy would use her rope like that. The young man said that the goddess must listen to him. He himself is not satisfied, but only such a goddess of beauty as Aphrodite is capable of taking on this difficult task. The girl awkwardly retells Suda's words. The young man stubbornly begins to insist that everything is exactly so, and intends to name this operation the temptation of the basilisk. He continues to repeat, how can an ordinary girl seduce a monster? No, it is impossible. But Aphrodite Kanch is the great goddess of beauty. The girl agrees and says that she has no choice because Suda will not be able to do anything without her, so she will have to take everything into her own hands. Molodik thanks her for repeatedly helping him, but he thinks to himself, all this is outright lies. Honestly, he does not believe that this monster can distinguish the beauty of a good girl from the ugliness of an ugly one, but he still needs the bait. After she was thrown onto this land, Aphrodite lost her powers but retained a great reserve of vital energy. Therefore, in case of any unlikely complications, she is unlikely to suffer, so he chose her for this role. Meanwhile, Carolina says that her master dared such a bold and decisive act as befits a mighty demon. And Sil panicked. How can one tie a goddess to a tree and use her as bait? The court thinks it does this not without a pang of conscience, but this time it had no other choice. He looks at the happy Aphrodite and feels awkward. It seems to him, after all this, he will buy her everything she asks for. Then Suda orders the goblins to gather and listen to him. He says that Basilisk is the most dangerous monster they have ever faced, so the task will be deadly, and he asks if he can count on them. The goblins respond with extraordinary enthusiasm. Suda thanks them and suggests starting to implement the plan. He feels the wind is blowing in the right direction and looks at the basilisk. First, he wants to start with the skill where he attacks with mad mushroom spores. This way, he plans to lure Basilisk out of his hideout. Mushroom successfully applies his technique on the basilisk, which is dozing among the branches of the tree. Because of this, the basilisk wakes up. She flies up again and the status shows that the monster is irritated. Suda understands the mushroom's skill worked. In his mind, he orders Aphrodite, it's her turn, let her lure the basilisk to herself. The girl agrees. She throws her hair ribbon and calls the basilisk, let it come to her and grab her. She suggests that he do it. At some point, the girl sees the furious monster rushes toward her at a crazy speed. Looking at his face, the girl trembles with horror and begs Suda to save her. Aphrodite did not stop screaming, begging Suda to save her from the terrible basilisk. The young man used the Contra skill to order the goblins to attack the basilisk. The monsters immediately started to carry out this order. They cover it with wooden shields. The basilisk did not expect this. Suda understands this is his only chance. He activates the counter-row skill, pulls the furious mushroom out of the ball capsule and orders it to release spores. The goblins throw the small monster and it immediately attacks the huge monster with its spores. The basilisk flaps its wings, pushing away the spores of the mad mushroom. Suda understands the basilisk still has the strength to fight back. Then he orders the goblins to attack the basilisk. The small monsters fell in a heap on the exhausted basilisk and grabbed it. The young man thinks if the basilisk escapes, their entire operation will fail, but he hopes they will manage. Suddenly, the basilisk receives the exhaustion status. Noticing this, Suda uses the contact skill and tells Carolina that it's her turn to attack. The girl nods and agrees. The girl jumps from one of the branches near the tree and hovers right above the basilisk. Then she raises her leg and with all her might strikes the basilisk right in the head, and the loud thudding blow echoes throughout the area. Carolina managed to pierce the basilisk's head and blood splattered from the wound. The monster lost consciousness. Aphrodite, the seal, and most importantly, Suda froze at that moment. In a moment, everyone shouted that they had managed to defeat the huge basilisk. Later, in the Adventurers Guild, everyone whispered that Suda is back, and no one could believe that some newbie managed to defeat that very basilisk. Chloe beamed with joy and clasped her hands together. She said that Suda is incredible because he managed to tame the basilisk itself. The girl awkwardly says that the reward for the young man 3 million coal will be delivered tomorrow, because it is a large sum, and they will not bring it right now. The young man looks at his profile and thinks, Now he will be able to solve the problem with Seal's debt. It was a dangerous quest, but he is glad he took it on and even raised it thanks to the victory over the basilisk. Seal approaches the boy and thanks him. She adds that she doesn't know what she would do without him. The girl asks how she can repay the boy. Suda replies that he shouldn't because without Carolina's help and the monsters, he wouldn't have managed at all. Aphrodite runs up to the young man and says that he is completely stunned because he managed to forget about her. The young man replies, he completely forgot her because even the beauty of the goddess Aphrodite contributed to that. Suddenly Chloe approaches the guy and says that Suda once mentioned, a dead basilisk pierces bodies, hanging them on tree branches. The guy confirms that's how it was, so there was such a sharp smell. The girl replied that basilisks usually behave this way when preparing for offspring, therefore, it can be assumed that the basilisk was female. Suda and Aphrodite were very surprised by this. Aphrodite began to ask what all this meant and why the basilisk had attacked her then. The young man thinks that maybe Dai's beauty had nothing to do with it, and the basilisk just wanted to make her food storage for its offspring, and it ended up being too much. He calls Aphrodite and says that such behavior of the female basilisk means the charm of the goddess works even on her own sex. The girl blushes and says that it means she can seduce even women. Suda smiles, and inside he is glad that Aphrodite is so easy to deceive. The next day, Suda's group received 3 million coal, and having calmed down, set off for Bakraji farm with a seal. So for some time, they stayed on the eastern branch of the Bakraji company. Suda decided that Seela's sadness had dissipated, and that her freedom was no longer under threat. However, the man who previously threatened Suda and Sil said that nothing would come of it. The bag does not contain everything, although there were supposed to be 3 million coal. The man responds with a question asking if the boy is familiar with the word interest. And he also says, he is fascinated that they collected such a large amount in such a short time, but the amount of debt cannot remain the same. The guy asks again about the percentages and then how much they still owe. The man starts calculating and says they still have about 3 million coal left. The court is shocked. The man says calmly that if they bring this amount, the issue of new slaves will be closed forever. Suda understands. At first, the man did not intend to keep his promise, so he decided to change the rules of the game. The guy started shouting and demanded an answer as to why such demands were made. At that moment, Seal took out a package and declared that he would pay and that the package contained 3 million coal. She says that she wanted to give them to Suda because at least now she is free. The man rummages through his bag and cannot believe his eyes. Seal bows, apologizing for the long delay in payment, then turns and heads for the exit. The man quickly flew up and stood right in front of CL. He shouted that there was a mistake here and that he had miscalculated everything because the actual debt percentage is 5 million coal. He insists that it is time to fill out the form for the new product. Suda wonders to himself how much longer this man will behave so arrogantly if they already had to pay twice as much. He is sure this is abnormal. He also believes that probably this was decided even before the loan. The contract cannot be broken, so talking to him is just a waste of time. Then the man gets annoyed that Suda and Seal are silent, pulls a knife from his jacket, and orders Suda to go get the money and Seal to stay here. Suda shouts for the Seal to follow him. The girl is very worried, but the young man smiles and says that everything is fine. He had said before you can never tell from the outside, but he is very strong. The girl believes his words. The man asks the boy if he wants to dance, but the boy only gives a crooked smile. He takes out his capsule with a ball and says that he has a person who can teach this man a lesson. Then the young man calls the humanoid beast and orders him to attack. In a moment, the humanoid beast swings and hits the man right in the face. He flies with great force straight into the wall. Suda asks how he was hit and who Bakraji is. When he comes out, he looks around and tells the man to leave the money, but not to appear anymore in his life or the lives of his comrades. Later, the boy asks CL if she really sold the weapons store. The girl answers that it is true. She sold it immediately after returning and even managed to think everything over during the mission. The young man understood. Sayal took those 3 million coal by selling the shop. He asks if this is normal since the shop was very important to Sayal, it belonged to her master. The girl smiles and says that she couldn't go searching because she was busy working in the shop all the time. But finding the master is more important than working in the shop. Suda says he understands and adds, it was the right decision. He is sure that Master Seal would not want her to spend her whole life in that shop. Seal then turns to Suda, pulls him out of his thoughts, and says she wanted to ask something. Suda could take her with him. The young man stops in surprise and decides to clarify if the girl really wants to go on a journey with him. Sayal replied, if the only thing she can do for this journey is to create and repair things, then she can become Suda's personal blacksmith. He insists, repeating that she is confident in her suitability for the group, and at the same time she adds, this is a way to thank the group for helping her. Suda says that is a very good offer. However, he says that the goal of their journey is to defeat a powerful demon, so he wonders if the girl understands how dangerous it can be. Sayal says that she does not care about the goal of the journey or how many difficulties and dangers they will encounter on the way. Even a powerful demon will not stop her, and the main thing for her is one: to find her master. Suda asks if she really wants that, and then she is ready for anything. Seal replies that this is exactly so, 100%. The young man asks the girl to turn away for a second, and she obeys. Suda then touches the seal with his ball spear. The girl suddenly turns around. A bright light flashes behind her. Suddenly she finds herself in some clearing and tries to understand exactly where she has been taken. Suddenly she sees Aphrodite and Caroline. The girls, who were peacefully resting in the sphere, are shocked by Seal's sudden appearance here. The girl starts shaking her head and asks what Suda has done to her. The boy activates skill contact and addresses the girl, asking if she can hear him. Seal does not understand how Suda ended up in her head at all. He says if the girl wants to get out of there, she should tell him immediately and he will release her. If she needs to say something, she should use telepathy. Focus on it, and the young man will hear her voice in his head. After his words, the girl asks why the young man put her inside the capsule, and Suda replies that it is simply more convenient that way. The young man says that the journey is a big risk, but the capsule with the ball can protect the girl. Also, if she gets tired of walking, she can rest inside the capsule. And inside the capsule, Sail will be able to heal her wounds or illness and also satisfy her hunger there. Sail is amazed. She nodded and realized that it really makes sense. Aphrodite and Caroline, who were watching from the side, were surprised at how skillfully Suda covered everything. Meanwhile, the young man lifting the capsule said that thanks to this deal, he now has a good blacksmith girl in the women's group. It's simply wonderful. The next morning, Suda wakes up from something pushing him from the bed to the floor. Waking up, he looked around and saw the sweet face of the goddess Aphrodite, who was sleeping peacefully. The girl quietly pronounced the name of the main character, and Suda blushed, then in a dream asked if her breakfast was ready. At that moment, Caroline and Seal were sleeping next to Aphrodite. Caroline giggled and whispered in her sleep that she was so happy because her master finally showed his true face, and Seal dreamed of something indecent because she called Suda an animal. Suda looked at the overall picture. Caroline was sleeping by the wall, Seal in the middle, and Aphrodite was lying at the edge. It was she who pushed the boy. Suda tried to understand what the girls were dreaming about. Blushing, he did not understand why they had all gathered here. Of course, there was nothing better than sleeping with such beauties, but sleeping with them in any sense was impossible. After some time, the young man told the girl, when they had already woken up, that it was hard for them to get up. But before setting off on the road, he wanted to say something to them. Aphrodite, rubbing her eyes, asked what kind of formality that was. Suda said that the girls used to always sleep in the capsule, but lately they constantly go outside to sleep, so he wants the girls to explain to him why they do this. Aphrodite says that, of course, the capsule is very comfortable, but she is terribly tired of being confined by the capsule. Then the young man asks Caroline what she thinks. The girl replies that her task is to watch over Aphrodite so that, after smelling the mushrooms, she does not pounce on her master with animal instinct. The girl was very outraged and began to shout at Caroline for mentioning that incident. She stated that she had no need to attack Suda. The young man asked Seal what he thought. The girl replied, if he had allowed her to take the blacksmith's tools into the capsule, she might not have had to go, but even then she was lonely there without the girls. The boy says he understands everything and thinks himself, the girls have good reasons. But it all starts with Aphrodite being the first to get out of the capsule. And if you think about it, the ideal solution is to assemble the capsule from the inside. After some time, the young man asked the three girls what things they wanted to put in the capsule. Aphrodite smiles and says that she wants a soft, fluffy bed like the one she had in heaven, so she will be infinitely happy. Carolina said that her heart would be happy to accept anything from the master, but she would most like a book. And if she had a mini library with various editions, she could endure the absence of neighbors. Seal said that she knows exactly what she wants. She wants to be given materials to create new weapons, because when she works with high-quality materials, she loses track of time. After some time, the young man had gathered a whole bunch of new purchases. Sudo was surprised by the girl's request. After all, even with money, it is not so simple. He understands, it seems the mighty demon has not yet risen, so he will not manage quickly. Therefore, for now, he can take care of the lady's whims and take on a new quest. Life returns to its shores. After a while, Chloe greeted Suda, because for completing the quest his traveler rank was raised to F. The young man embodies the ranking system from G, the lowest, to S, the highest. He rubs the back of his head and says that it turns out it's quite good. He tells Chloe, on average, a new adventurer needs a year to rise to F rank. The girl adds that Suda's leveling speed is simply impressive. It seems his recent victory over the basilisk gave such a rapid growth. Due to the rank promotion, the young man now has access to more quests, so she advises him to look at the task board. After 10 minutes, the young man stood by the board and assigned himself 5 tasks: gathering iron ore, mining copper ore, gathering silver ore, gathering gold ore, and gathering platinum ore. The reward is money calculated per gram of ore. The youth looked at these tasks with delight and immediately understood. These are incredible quests because they promised easy money. The reward for iron ore is not very large, but for platinum they pay simply fabulous money up to 600 coal per gram. However, obtaining platinum ore is not so easy, and yet if they are lucky, they will quickly become rich. Even if he does not manage, this time Sila's skills may be very useful for them. The boy hands Chloe sheets with tasks and says he is ready to take on these quests. Chloe replies, these quests are about ore mining in the mine of this area. She asks if the boy has a pickaxe and a lantern. Suda says he has neither. Chloe says that since both these items are needed for the quest, he must buy them right now. The pickaxe will cost him 5,000 coal and Ferrania 2,000 coal. Suda counts the numbers and says that for 4 people it will cost 28,000 coal. He says that none of this matters. Even though these expenses were necessary, he will still be able to extract more ore and come out on top. After 2 hours, they stood near Ares' mine. Aphrodite says she sees the mine for the first time, and it somewhat reminds her of cheese with holes. Caroline says many miners came to Ares' mine from the city of St. Bell to earn money. But earthquakes often happen here, and monsters appear in crowds, so the ore extraction was entrusted to travelers. The court notes that Carolina understands this world well. The girl thanks the boy for the compliment but says that regarding work in the mine, the court should seek help from Sayal. The boy returns to the girl and asks if this place is different from the Sayal store, then notices that she is trembling, so he immediately asks what is wrong with her. Suddenly the girl screamed with joy. She says she is very happy because she hasn't been to mine for a long time. Suda did not understand why the girl clung to it so strongly. One day Suda decides to ask if it is true that the seal race really loves stones and earth, because as far as he knows, games often stamp such cliches, so it's better to check. The girl confirms this theory. The girl says that dwarves come from the same tribe known as spirits of the earth, so ore brings them great joy. If they come across good quality ore, Seal doesn't even know if he can hold himself back. Suda imagines the scene, Seal savoring tasty ore, but immediately tells himself to put jokes aside. He hopes this won't happen. However, it still adds to his motivation. He tells everyone it's time to move on to finding money from the farm and get rich, and together they set off in search of ore. After some time, the heroes were already in one of the mine caves. The young man said that it was quite dark in the cave. He pulls out a spherical sphere and says that the lanterns he bought at the Travelers Guild might come in handy right now. Fortunately, they can be placed in a capsule. Suddenly, Carolina calls him and asks Suda to give it to her. In a moment, she summons a small glowing ball. Suda asks Carolina what this glowing ball is. The girl explains, it can be used to light the way in the dark for a short distance, and with the help of magic, the work can last about 8 hours. Suda immediately felt depressed. If he had known about this earlier, he would never have bought those lanterns at the Adventurers Guild. The young man even thought that it would be simply wonderful to have such a glowing ball. He thanks Carla for this glowing ball, and the girl thanks him for the compliment. Suddenly, Aphrodite calls Suda from the side. The young man asks the girl not to make noise and asks if she has already started collecting ore. The goddess says that she even managed to find something. She shows the boy a bunch of G-rank stones, but unfortunately, these are ordinary stones without any special features. Suda hissing says that these are ordinary stones. Aphrodite is very surprised and replies that this is not true because these stones are incredibly shiny. Suda asks Aphrodite to look at these stones with her divine sight because now her skill will be more useful than ever. The girl says she can, but this ability consumes too much mana, so she won't use it unless necessary. The young man thinks that he has his own divine sight, maybe a bit worse than Aphrodite's, but at least it will be somewhat useful. He goes and looks at the characteristics of any stone. For example, the first thing he came across was iron ore. It contains very little iron. He gives the stone to Silu and asks if it can be sold. The girl, apologizing, says she is afraid but nothing will come of it. It seems she was thrown out by other travelers, which means they themselves couldn't make money from it. Otherwise, they would have taken it. The young man stands up and says what this means. All the valuable mine has already been dug up by other adventurers before his group. These thoughts immediately twist his hands and make him want to give up right away and go home. Suddenly, Seal says there is no problem, they can take care of the ore themselves. The girl waves a pickaxe and it clangs hollowly. She shows F-rank copper ore and iron ore and says they will mine the ore themselves. Everyone was impressed. Suda asks how the girl knows where the ore is. SL explains her race adores ore, so she can determine where the ore is by its smell. Suda's spirits immediately came alive. He realized Sayal has a special skill, and with the help of this girl they will be able to earn a lot of money. He sharply turns to the girl and stares at her eyes wild like fire. He says this is their chance, and asks, can she show them exactly where the ore deposits lie? Seal says she can help them but also adds, Suda scares her to death because he is so close. The boy realizes he is blinded by greed for money, so he apologizes to the girl. He wipes his forehead and thinks, if Seal hates him, then she won't help. Aphrodite watches everything, turns to Caroline and says, are they thinking about the same thing now? The girl replies that it might be so. Aphrodite thinks she won't lose to Seal, and Caroline is sure she won't let anyone take her master away. Together the girls shout that they will also gather ore quite a lot. Goddess Aphrodite and demon Caroline stand with pickaxes and simply shine with motivation. Seal doesn't understand what's happening and Suda rejoices. Aphrodite and Carolina are full of inspiration. After some time Seal says she smells ore behind the stone wall. The boy orders Sail to start digging, but Aphrodite intervenes and tells Suda to trust her with the work. She saw how Sail worked with the pickaxe, so she thinks she can do the same. Suda freezes in surprise at such an unexpected offer and asks if Aphrodite is serious. The girl says she is absolutely serious, because once she had the nickname Aphrodite the Gatherer while other gods fought the boss, she collected extremely rare precious stones. Suda understood she is talking about the game and his hopes vanished. The girl says that Suda will soon see what she is capable of. Then shouting the battle cry of divine attack, she drives the pickaxe into the stone wall with all her might. The young man notices that the girl's whole body is trembling as if divinely. Suddenly Seal interrupts them and says that Aphrodite can ruin the ore if she hits it properly. The girl asks again if it is really that bad. Seal replies, very bad, then she asks to show how to do it. Suda understands, as expected from Seal she is a real pro here. Meanwhile, Aphrodite is trying to figure out what to do next. Suddenly Suda remembers Carolina and tries to understand what she is doing. Meanwhile, the girl resorts to magic and breaks a huge hole in the wall. Seal shouts at Carolina and asks what she is doing. Carolina replies, digging with tools is not very effective, so maybe it's easier to extract the ore with magic. Seal orders her not to do that again, she could destroy the ore, and then there would be no more. But the girl can't stand it and asks Aphrodite and Caroline to sit in the corner and not interfere. After 3 hours, a pile of iron ore and Class F copper ore gathered next to Sada. The guy decided that they did very well. The girl approaches Suda and asks if she can take some ore. Suda says of course she can, but he is curious, why does she need it? The girl says she wants to make new weapons for the goblins, and considering how much they got today, she will be able to make a lot of weapons. Suda says that would be great. He spares nothing to strengthen his goblins, so with Seal's skills, their affairs will soon improve. Then Suda asks if the girls have seen Aphrodite. Carolina replies that Aphrodite decided to look for ore herself because she also wants to help. Suda thinks that is very good, but he feels extremely bad at heart. Suddenly, a scream came from the depths of the cave. They all rushed there. Suda tries to understand what happened there, then shouts to Aphrodite that they are very close now. The boy sees such an image. Aphrodite is captured by crazy F-class puppet voids with high durability. The girl asks Suda to save her. The boy understands. Somewhere earlier he saw the same picture, he saw someone capture Aphrodite. Suda looks at what is happening in surprise and says that these monsters, these crazy puppet devils, are real cool guys. Carolina pulls Suda out of her thoughts. He throws a capsule with a ball right at the puppets and shouts at them to release his partner. After some time, the puppets finally release Aphrodite from the stone hands. Suda sees them running away and releases the goddess of beauty Aphrodite. Carolina puts on a serious expression and says that there is nowhere to run from her. Suda notices that the girl has ice magic. Carolina tells the master to show these bad creatures her power. Suda thinks that Carolina, as always, is simply wonderful. He thanks the girl and throws a capsule at the last 2 puppets, who are petrified in ice and cannot move. Later the capsule contained 3 captured puppet dolls. After a few hours they gathered a huge pile of various ores. Suda says they were lubricated and in his thoughts adds, it seems they managed to catch 3 puppets as well. Aphrodite says her legs can no longer hold her. Sheil says she is also very tired. Molodic says they can go to the capsule to rest and he will inform the girls when they reach the hotel. Having climbed out of the mine, the young man thinks he does not feel his own body. Mining is not a game. Having jumped out of the cave, he imagines that around him is space and no one's soul. Sitting on the nearest rock, the young man thinks that before returning, he will play Monster Crossing a little. Now he has a choice of 5 crazy dolls. He wants to try the company Crazy Puppet with Crazy Puppet. Soon he comes across a monster called E-Class Evil Rubble. It had high survivability but no skills. The description said that if they were mixed together, they could produce a very powerful monster. The young man looks at the new monster and thinks it looks like a completely harmless minion. Next to it, he notices a strange inscription engraved at the intersection of 2 evil rebels. He is gnawed by the thought, what will happen if 2 evil stones are crossed? The young man decides to try to cross them. The final result was a giant monster named Golem. His class was level D, he had colossal physical strength, but no skills yet. The youth notices the parameter of his physical strength and realizes, in his collection, this is the most powerful monster. But the record that crossing 2 homunculi can produce an even stronger monster has not disappeared, so it turns out this is not yet his final form. He understands that the evolution of this stone is not yet complete, so the young man decided, from tomorrow he will open the hunt for crazy dolls. After some time he left the Adventurers Guild and looked at his main reward 36,000 call. If converted to yen, it will be slightly less than 40,000. And yet it is not very profitable because the price for iron and copper ore is very low. Next time he will immediately take up silver and gold ore. He walks and thinks, if he gives her even a little gold, he will somehow satisfy Chloe's request because Suda wants to see her smile. The next morning, Aphrodite asked what happened to Suda and why he suddenly decided to buy a new bed. Suda also bought Aphrodite new clothes, a dancer's outfit of level E, the very one the girl once wanted. Suda asks if the girl remembers that event with the basilisk, because it was then that he promised to buy her something new for the one who gave her all at that time. The girl blushes, rubs her cheek, then shows herself to Suda in all her radiance and asks what he likes about her new outfit. The young man says he has nothing to say because everything is fine. The girl does not understand what he means. Then he explains that he does not understand why she is angry. She is as beautiful and gentle as always, so any clothes will suit her. Aphrodite immediately blushed and said she did not think Suda thought that way about him. The young man replied that of course he thinks so and that he will go back to the Ares mine. He grabs her hand and says that is why they need to finish shopping quickly. The girl is embarrassed by such behavior, and Suda decisively sets off because today is just the right time. After some time, they reach the guild's magical tools store. They were greeted by a friendly young man who asked what Suda and Aphrodite wanted to buy. The young man indifferently said he was looking for the biggest and softest bed possible. The young consultant began to smile crookedly and replied that he understood everything, then invited them to follow him to another department. The young man did not understand why everyone around was looking at him. The consultant said that all beds are here, but he would still like to recommend a bed made from one of the rarest materials, angel cotton. Suddenly it dawned on Suda because that boy and that girl came to buy a bed together. Now everyone probably thinks he is dating Aphrodite, or even that they are already married. The consultant pulls him out of his thoughts. He says he recommends buying this bed. It is made of very high-quality materials including angel cotton. When they sleep on this bed, they will feel as if they are in paradise. Suda understands that the bed looks incredibly luxurious and decides to check the price. The cost of this bed, made from 100 angel cotton, is 1,200,000 call. Suddenly, Aphrodite tells the consultant not to try to deceive them. The man asks if the girl really did not like the bed. Aphrodite says that it seems they will have to call the explanation team. She says she means the angel cotton in this bedding. From what she can see, there is only 30 angel cotton here. The other 70 is Shira down. She would not say that it is a bad material, but the man insists that the bed is made of angel cotton, so it smells like a scam. The girl adds, speaking about the pillows, that they are made of absolutely unknown material. In this store, it seems like unsuitable materials are everywhere, so she does not know how to choose what they need. Suda steps back and freezes. This is incredible. Who would have thought that Aphrodite actually knows something about anything? Finally, she is at least somewhat useful. Aphrodite is definitely not happy that the seller is trying to cheat them, so this needs to be resolved quickly, and Suda cannot afford a bed that costs 1,200,000 coal. He was already about to leave when the man starts shouting at the young man and girl to wait. He says they have another bed, the quality of which he is ready to fully guarantee. He also says that this is the best bed in their store and is perfect for a married couple. These words surprise Aphrodite. Suda realizes even the seller took them for a couple, but that is not the case. Aphrodite repeats the seller's words and asks to show them this bed. The man thanks the girl. After some time, the man shows them a luxurious bed and says it is made from the spores of a mad mushroom. Thanks to this bed, new sexual desires will appear in the couple every night. Aphrodite blushed and said that the bed looks simply incredible, and Suda started shouting that they will never buy it. The man says he is not talking to him but to the girl. Aphrodite ordered Themis not to interfere because she is having a business conversation with this man. The guy does not understand why the girl gets involved in such things, and if he does not intervene, his life will turn into a real hellish nightmare. He understands he can do nothing, so he is forced to submit and orders Aphrodite to come to him. The girl approaches him. Suda hugs her tightly. She blushes all over and Anosha finds it cute. The man was nervous, but the young man stretched out his hand and said that this bed did not suit them. They had already agreed, so he asked that man to keep this bed for himself. The man bows and apologizes for his rudeness, and all the girls nearby squeal with delight. The court says that the purchases have failed. He says that for some time they will have to sleep on the old bed. The girl says it is true. The young man thinks that when he called himself Aphrodite's boy, it did not affect her so much and that he pressed her to himself. Suda realized that he needed to give her something again, while the girl meanwhile thought that hugging a boy was cool. Later in the mine, Aphrodite held a pickaxe in her hands and sang a song about how the beautiful goddess is called Aphrodite, and they also had to buy her a nice dress because Suda loved her the most. The boy was confused, thinking about what had happened to the goddess. He thought she would be offended because they failed to buy a new bed, but she was suddenly in a wonderful mood. Carolina called Aphrodite and asked what kind of strange song it was. It was distracting her from work. Aphrodite squinted and said that Caroline was afraid she would take Suda away from her. The young man realized that this was too straightforward. Carolina said that if the goddess spoke about it, she still did not know after all. She had been faithful to a powerful demon all her life, and had loved him unrequitedly for over 300 years. Suda realized that he needed a partner who would love him until the end of his life. He caught himself feeling jealous. Aphrodite laughed quietly and said she would tell Caroline a little secret. It was written on her face. She was losing in matters of love. Suda understands the atmosphere is tense and the topic needs to be changed. He turns to Sil and says he wanted to ask her something. He says he wants to get gold and platinum ore today, so he asks Sil if she knows how to do it. The girl replies that it will be very difficult. Other adventurers are also snooping around to extract the precious ore, so these deposits may already be depleted. But if they try even harder and go down into the mine, they might figure it out and find the needed ore. But the deeper they go into the mine, the higher the risk. The young man says he understands everything, but still wants to get the precious ore and does not want to take risks. During the conversation, Caroline runs into him and tells them not to worry. Yesterday she asked the bats to explore the mine, so now they know about all the dangers here. And if Suda wants to go down into the depths of the mine, the mice can guide her. Suda realized that Carolina simply amazes. Suddenly, Aphrodite shouted from the side. The girl did not understand why the mice needed her. Suda asks if this is Caroline's doing. The girl says no and does not know why these mice decided to attack Aphrodite. After some time, Suda caught a crazy puppet doll and realized the deeper they go, the more crazy puppets they encounter. He feels that he is fine. They reach some cave and Suda understands it is very spacious here. Suddenly, Seal shouts the name at the top of her lungs and says that behind this wall she senses the smell of precious metals. It was different from all the walls before. Suda exhales in amazement and says that maybe now they can earn a lot of money. Aphrodite replies that everyone must give this opportunity to the great goddess. The girl swings a pickaxe and shouts about a divine attack. She falls doubled over in pain, and Caroline says that the strike did not leave even a scratch on the wall. Caroline, approaching the wall, says that this is a very strong rock. She fears that the picks alone will not be enough here. Suda understands why other travelers did not touch this ore vein, then makes a decision and takes out his ball capsule. He calls the goblin, let him deal with this at his will. Caroline screams as soon as she sees a large golem. Suda replies that it is him. He got it yesterday as a result of crossing dolls, so all the heavy work can be entrusted to him. He orders the golem to demolish the wall, and it immediately begins to carry out the order. Swinging, the golem punches the wall with its fist and breaks a huge hole in it. Everyone freezes in amazement. A secret passage with stairs descending down opens before the heroes. The CUD group began descending the long stone stairs. The young man wondered if they were really that long. Sil happily said that the smell of ore was getting stronger and she was sure they would find it very soon. The court decided that this ladder was made a very, very long time ago, but it was troubled by the question, where does it lead? Suddenly, the young man sees piles of silver or D rank, gold or C rank, and platinum or B rank. Everyone screamed with delight when they saw the huge reserves of ore they had collected. But now it was no longer just stuck into the wall, as before it was packed into boxes and wooden barrels. Sil lifted one of the many stones and decided to lick the piece. She happily turned around and declared that the ore tasted incredible. It was genuine platinum ore. The young man was very surprised. He said he could not believe it because there was so much ore in one place. Seal replied that it was also of very high quality. The girl believes that all this ore can be sold for approximately 400 million coal. The young man froze in a state of unspeakable shock at this huge figure. He could not believe that very soon they would become rich. Suddenly, Aphrodite screamed nearby. The girl could not understand what had happened. Meanwhile, Suda approached and saw the skeleton of a man neatly folded as if arranged. Carolina replied that it seemed to her that the miners used this place as a warehouse for ore or something like a treasury. The judge asked the girl how she knew this, and Carolina replied that she did not know, she just guessed. The girl continued. She noticed the age of this skeleton. She could say for sure that it had been lying here for about 100 years. This mine was discovered relatively recently by travelers, and before that it belonged to the state. So all the ore extracted from the mine went to the state treasury. And this suggests that this miner might have hidden part of the ore here to resell it later. Suda said that it sounds quite logical, and in his mind it formed like this. This man is the only one who knows about the existence of this place. He had a part of mine door here and most likely died in an accident. After that, the entrance here was blocked with stones and no one ever found out about this place. Aphrodite, leaning on the rocks, said that this man managed to hide a lot of ore, but now he no longer needs it and it is of no use at all. Suddenly the girl felt the rock she had leaned on earlier began to move. Suddenly, a huge hand appeared from under the ground. Everyone froze in horror when a whole cluster of stones grew from under the ground. It turned out it was a level 20 iron golem. And the monster turned out to be C rank with extraordinarily great physical strength. The iron golem wildly rushes into attack. Suda did not understand why this monster attacked them, but Carolina replied that probably they just woke it up. It seems he also used this treasury room for resting. Suda realized they will not get out of here just like that, so they will have to fight him. The young man takes out his ball capsule. The young man throws the capsule right at the monster as food. But when the capsule hits the golem, for some reason it is not inside it, although it definitely hit the target. Suddenly Suda caught an idea, but he could not catch it. The dirt covering the entire body of the golem interfered. Because of this dirt, the capsule could not touch its body. It seemed that this dirt had settled on it over all the years Suda had spent here. He realized, even with a sword they would hardly be able to defeat it. While Suda was thinking about everything, the huge golem had already begun attacking the young man, swinging its giant leg. Suddenly, the young man realized he was being attacked and somehow managed to dodge the leg strike. Carolina rushed to the owner and asked if he was okay. When the young man got up, he understood. Although the golem is slow, its strikes are incredibly strong, and if he hesitates even for a second, Suda will definitely die. Suddenly, his thoughts are dispelled by Aphrodite's voice. She hints that Suda is afraid. She stands in front of him and orders the young man to retreat and leave everything to the girl. He begins to shout, insisting that the goddess has gone mad because it has become too dangerous. The girl asks Sud to remember. When she landed on Earth, she lost all her magical skills, but her health and other stats remained unchanged. Suda agreed with the girl's words. Aphrodite said that if you think about it, the baby golem cannot harm her. The girl starts shouting at the golem to get out of here quickly. As soon as she says this, the golem lunges into attack and starts swinging its arms. The next moment, it hits the girl and throws her aside. After the blow, she gets up and says, to defeat the goddess of love and beauty, this is not enough. Suda states that Aphrodite is a good girl, while at the same time shouting at Caroline to strike her. The girl acquired a demonic form, wings and horns grew. The court stopped in amazement upon seeing Carolina and how she flies. The girl activates magic and says, how dare you attack my master? He uses water magic and drenches him from all sides. The novice notices, over all these years the dirt layered on the helmet has begun to fade. A momentan the girl calls her master to strike. The court throws a capsule with a ball and thinks that now everything should come together. The capsule hits the golem and it immediately bursts into bright light. It is pulled inside the capsule. In his hands was a spherical capsule. The boy thought, this time the girls managed even without his help. The golem sat in the capsule and did not know where he was. Suda thought they had managed to get through without any losses, and now he had an iron golem in his monster collection. Meanwhile, Caroline was scolding Aphrodite, and Seal was already running to hug her. After some time, the Suda group returned to the Adventurers Guild. They were met by Chloe. The girl said she was very sorry, but she could not pay for the ore that Suda brought. The court began to worry about why this happened. He even wondered, maybe it was about quality or something else. The girl replied that it was not about that at all. Chloe shouted that this ore is very expensive, and that she is not sure if she has enough money to buy this ore in Suda. This especially applies to platinum ore, and if you dump everything on the market at once, it can cause a price crash. In any case, this must be done gradually, so you need to be prepared for it. The young man understood what Chloe was talking about and decided that there was no point in making unnecessary noise because, as Seal said, all this ore could be sold for about 400 million coal. The young man got angry that he could not take the money immediately, but he could do nothing. He would have to wait. Leaving the guild, Aphrodite asked if Suda had already finished his business. Later, Suda said that in the end they would have to wait a whole week. Aphrodite suggested taking the ore to another place. Suda replied that they had brought too much ore at once. Walking along the road, he says that he thought about other shops, but at least in the guild they would not rip them off, so it is more reliable. Then he turns to Seal and says that it is not a big deal. He gave all the ore they mined to the guild. Seal says that this ore cannot be used to make weapons and armor. The quality is not suitable. Suda says he understands, but it will be difficult without weapons. After some time, Seal said that the tavern is on the other side. Suda replied that he still had one small matter left and asked if the girls would go with him for a short while. Later, the girls admitted that they somehow managed to get far from the city. Seal asked Suda what they were doing here. The young man replied that he wanted to cross a few monsters. Seal looks worried and asks if that is really possible. Carolina said that she understood everything and that it is better to lure monsters outside the city. Suda added that the girl understood everything correctly. Suda says that today they managed to gather a bunch of monsters. First, he wants to turn the crazy puppets into golems, and then combine this golem with another golem. The boy calls the iron golem the very one he just caught. The iron golem is of C rank and has incredible physical strength. It was the result of crossing two golems, but if you cross an iron golem with an identical one, you can get a powerful monster. Aphrodite is curious. She says that when you cross two golems, an iron golem appears. And she is very interested in what will happen if you cross two iron golems. Suda says that he is also interested in this. He thinks, if you cross two iron golems, you can get a very strong monster, but what kind exactly? After some time, a B-rank Adam and Gollum appeared before the young man and his group. He had incredible physical strength and vitality. Gollum had a skill-punching fist. The information window also reported that since this golem lives in remote mountains, it is one of the rarest types of golems. Sil looks at the monster with admiration and says that it is very cool. She asks Suda what this monster's name is. The boy replies that it is called Adamin Golem. It seems to be the last stage of its evolution. Sil repeats the name of this golem and widening her eyes to incredible sizes says that it means. Judging by the name, this golem or rather its entire body consists of Adam and ore, and Suda says that most likely that is the case. The girl replies that her people have always dreamed of Adamunner. She asks Suda if he allows it and then, can she make a weapon from this ore? Suda asks what is happening. The girl can make a truly good weapon from adamantine ore. Sil says that this is absolutely true. Suda asks Carolina if it would be possible to take some ore from the golem's body. The girl replies that she sees no problem with that golems have high regeneration. Even if they knock off some ore from it, its body will soon recover, of course. Suda says that he understands and then turns to Sil and says, then let Adamangollum remain for Sil. He orders her to create weapons as much as she wants, of course, within reason. The girl, unable to contain herself, throws herself around the young man's neck and thanks him. She also says that she is very glad to meet him. The young man replies that she is exaggerating. Meanwhile, Carolyn and Aphrodite looked at his actions with hatred. So contrary to all expectations, the young man did get the materials that Seal needed. The girl hugs the golem and says she is very happy to meet him. The next day, Suda and Carolina were walking through the city streets. The girl asked if he was absolutely sure about his choice since she didn't need to buy anything. The young man replied that he was completely sure. He adds that he remembers how the girl asked him for an interesting book, so he hopes she will find a book that she will like. He notices her outfit and says that she hasn't worn that maid's attire for a long time. Caroline replies, today they simply weren't going to hunt monsters, so she wore it. Carly asks if that's strange. The young man replies that there is nothing strange about this in his opinion. This maid's outfit suits Caroline very well. And he adds that he really likes this attire. The girl suddenly blushed with surprise and staggered. Suda asked what had happened to the girl. Carolina apologizes and blushes with embarrassment. Only the sharp compliments from the owner confused her a little. The young man understands her words. He thinks that Caroline often says something like that. He wonders if she is serious. He knows. He saved her from death and all that, but sometimes she overdoes it with gratitude. He folds his arms on his chest, and as happens when she takes his words too seriously, asks Caroline. The girl does not understand what this young man means. The court explains. For example, if she asks her to show the clothes, there is a chance that she will show them to him. The girl takes the boy's hand and says that if so, then of course she will show her thinks if the owner needs them. And also, she will do everything he asks. The boy starts shouting as soon as the girl does it. Carolina shyly apologizes and asks the host if he really didn't like it. The boy replies that he liked it, but everything was done incorrectly, so he asks her not to do it like that anymore. He, of course, thinks that it's all just because she showed him the clothes. But Carolina has been in love with a powerful demon for 300 years, so he can't help but feel that she is doing it only out of gratitude for his survival. The girl awkwardly clenched her fist, pressed it to her chest, and asked the master what he was thinking because she did not understand him. After some time, Suda and Carolina come to the shop. Suda notices a familiar male consultant. He greets them and invites them to enter the official guild shop. The young man recalls the face of the consultant from the furniture store. He apologizes and cautiously asks if they have met somewhere before he thinks that the man worked at the furniture store. The youth replies that the clients probably asked his brother. It just so happens that he works in the furniture shop. Suda notices that these two consultants are twins. He recalls an incident when the second consultant was extremely dishonest with clients, so he would not want to trust someone like that. Suda changes the subject and asks if there is any rare magical textbook in the shop. The postal shop seller again asks if the boy is interested in rare magical textbooks. He apologizes and says that he is very sorry, but they are too expensive, so he fears that the young man does not have enough money therefore. He sees no point in showing him such rare books. The man begins to shrink back and Suda picks up his words. Suddenly, Carolina pulls out a small dagger and rushes headlong toward the man, ordering him to watch his language. She threatens to tell him who, in her opinion, they think they are. Suda rushes to Carolina and shouts for her to calm down. The girl lets go of the man and apologizes to the boy. She says that the man was too rude to Suda, so she just wanted to cut out his tongue. Suda starts shouting, demanding that the girl release the man as soon as possible. The man straightens his tie and starts shouting at Suda and Carolina to get out of the shop. He growls the same way, telling them never to see the spirit of the couple again. Suda takes Carolina in his arms and says that they are very sorry. The young man says there is nothing to be done. They go to the second largest bookstore in the city, but for some reason it turns out to be very small. The girl says there is nothing wrong with this because the quantity of books is not important. but the quality isn't. She hopes that the local sellers will be more polite. Suda says that he hopes. He asks Carolina to inform him when she finds a book that she likes. The girl agrees and thanks the young man. After some time, Caroline flips through one book after another. In her thoughts, the girl tells herself that what people have written is not very interesting. Their style has hardly changed in the last 100 years and she considers it a waste of time. The court understands. He can hear what Carolina thinks, although it usually requires a lot of concentration. But sometimes strong thoughts break through everything by themselves. The judge understands that the girl is very upset because she still hasn't found a good book. He tells Carolina that she needs to leave here because the girl doesn't like anything here. The girl is embarrassed and raises her hands, saying that everything is not like that at all. The judge replies, there is no need to deny it because everything is visible on her. The girl agrees and says that she did not want to create unnecessary difficulties for the owner. Later the girl says that, to be honest, her family lives long, so human books compared to demon books are not very interesting. Suda replies, then they will go to another city and look for the book there. Carolina begins to feel embarrassed because all this is done because of her whim. The court says that Carolina is talking nonsense. After all, she has already saved him and other girls from trouble more than once, so he asks her to let him have the chance to repay her for it. The girl is deeply moved by these words. He falls unconscious. Sudik picks her up and asks what happened to the girl. Carolina replies that she was a little worried. All she needs for happiness are the words of her master. A few days later, Suda looked at his almost empty bag of money and thought that the guild still had not valued the Orso. It seemed he would have to look for a job. Entering the Travelers Guild, the young man immediately notices a crowd of people near the notice board. Those guys by the board say that another completely incredibly funny task has appeared. The second says to the first, forget about it because a ghost cannot be killed, and where did they even get this idea from? Suda looked at the task where he had to tame a ghost and there was a reward, 10 million coal. The boy was stunned by such a demand because for taming a basilisk they gave only 3 million coal. He turns to Chloe and apologizes, saying he came because of the ghost killing quest. He asks if she can tell him more about the quest. The girl says that a ghost has recently appeared in the cemetery. People have already nicknamed it a demon, and as they say, it is very dangerous. They say this ghost can summon and control the undead. Chloe says as soon as they receive the report about this ghost, they will immediately announce a reward. Suda thanks Chloe for the help. Having left the Adventurers Guild, he decides not to take this quest for any money. But Aphrodite starts shouting why the young man won't take it after all. Crazy money is paid for it. Suda explains, as he already said, the risk is too great and this mission is not worth it. Moreover, they will earn a lot of money after evaluating the ore, so they need to know when to stop. Aphrodite replies that Suda is probably right. The young man says that this way they will earn extra money on something simpler. Suddenly, Carolina approaches him. The girl says that all this is serious. If the boy does not want to take on this task, then let him entrust it to her. The judge asks if she is joking. Caroline says that since demons once lost the war to humanity, they had to set rules to no longer bother people. But it seems this ghost decided to break them, so Carly wants to meet him and stop him. The young man says that since there are certain rules between demons and humans, he does not object. He himself thought that Carly constantly helped them out of trouble, so now it is his turn to help the girl. Then the young man sets only one condition. He will go hunting ghosts with her, because he cannot allow her to go to such a dangerous place alone. The girl shyly thanks the host and says that he makes her heart beat faster. The boy thinks she got worked up again. Now he will have to choose his words more carefully. Later at night, the Suda group moves along the street. Sil asks why they are going to the cemetery in the dark, and the boy replies that it seems all ghosts become active only at night, so Sil has nothing to fear. He says if the girl is afraid, let her return to the hotel. There she will see how I'll start screaming and will say that she will never agree to this because it drives her crazy, while she worries about the boy and the girls. Aphrodite giggles and says that Sel is afraid of ghosts. The girl replies with a question, is Aphrodite also afraid of them? The girl says that she is not afraid of ghosts. She winks and says, after all, she is a goddess. If a ghost appears before her, she will destroy it with sacred magic. The silhouette clenches her fists and says, as befits a gray goddess. Her eyes shine with joy. Aphrodite asks to leave the ghost to her. She also tells Sil not to be afraid because she will protect her. Sil thanks the goddess and replies that she feels calmer. Suda notes. Although Sil cheered up, she did not notice that Aphrodite says this every time. 30 minutes later, Suda thinks that it was not worth expecting too much from Aphrodite and Sil. The girls huddled together. Aphrodite asked Sayal to walk a little slower. The girl asked what Aphrodite was doing and why she was hiding behind her back. Aphrodite says that only ghosts can attack Sil from behind, so she is covering her. Suddenly the girl grabs Suda by the hand and presses herself against him. She asked him not to go far into the sea because something might happen. Suda felt nauseous from the awkwardness. He shouts that he will not go anywhere, but overall, if Aphrodite is so scared, she should have stayed at the hotel. The girl was confused and said that Suda should not say such things because she worries about him a lot, so she will not go to the hotel. She is not afraid at all. And Keel, with tears in her eyes, said that she is scared to go to the hotel alone. Suda understands there is a reason why they do not want to return. Carolina, who is watching all this, suddenly notices something from the side and warns the owner to be careful. There is something in the tree leaves. Irank Hidadama climbed out of the top of the tree. This monster had enormous magical power and was skilled in fire magic. Aphrodite and Seal clung to each other tightly and shouted in panic that the monster is a ghost. Aphrodite completely lost her mind, and Seal begged her to come to her senses. Suda already thought that they should have left them at the inn after all. Suddenly Carolina shouts to Suda that a monster is attacking them. The boy summons Adamantite Golem and orders it to protect her. The Golem takes a defensive stance. The next moment little Hidadama tried to defeat the Golem, but he failed. Suda turned to Carolina and said that he understands. This little Hidadama can do nothing more and looks somewhat weak. Carolina replied that this is one of the ghost's minions. It turned out that he was ordered to attack anyone who approaches his master. Suda said, if so, then it means he diligently follows orders, even despite the enemy's advantage. Suda understands, such a monster can be useful, so it needs to be caught and locked in a capsule. In one moment he realizes, if the monster protects its master, then it turns out that in this world there is someone who has the same abilities as he does. And it turns out that he will steal the monster from someone, and in games, that is punished. He turns around and, deciding that now this monster will be his, throws a capsule with a ball at it. As it turns out, in this world monsters can be safely taken from others, so little Hidadama ends up in Suda's ball capsule. Suda thinks that since he managed to subdue someone else's monster, others can too, which means his absolute skill of domination is just pure fraud. Meanwhile, Carolina said that Suda simply has no equals. After some time, the young man caught the small fire spirit again. He is happy because he has already managed to catch 4 ghost servants. But where is the ghost itself? Suda and Carly split up to speed up the search, but so far without results. Suddenly Suda hears someone quietly laughing. Suda decides that it is the ghost's voice. The monster says that this young man is the same person who hunts his subordinates. Suda turns his head but finds no one. Suddenly someone orders the boy to look up. She is there. Suda raises his eyes and cannot believe what he sees. A ghost is in front of him. The ghost was a sweet girl named Yuko. She was at level 32, and her rank reached S. She had high endurance, physical strength, and intellect, and her highest attribute was magical power. She had an average level of fire magic and a high level of dark magic. Suda realizes this monster has high attributes, and truly this is his first dangerous opponent. Now it became clear why this girl has such a big reward. Suda understands. It does not matter whether he hits her with the capsule before the battle starts or not. The young boy throws a capsule ball at the girl and she does not even move. Strangely terrifying. Suddenly the capsule flies right through him. Suda is confused. This simply cannot be. He thinks that maybe it's impossible to catch beings without a physical body in a capsule. But then he won't be able to catch her in the capsule. And he doesn't have a monster that could harm the ghost. It turns out that Suda's group now has a big problem, this ghost. Meanwhile, the girl sighs and says that this is exactly what the boy calls an attack. She giggles and says that now it's time to truly attack her. The young man panics. He thinks that if he looks closely, the girl is quite cute. He realizes he needs to buy time and not think about all this. He shouts for the ghost to wait a bit and suggests she sit at the negotiation table to discuss everything. The girl calls Suda a foolish adventurer and says that people like her have long gotten rid of unnecessary things like emotions, so now asking her for mercy is completely pointless. She casts a rather powerful spell and says goodbye to the young man, sending him off with words. She wants to get to hell as soon as possible. Suda, looking at the spell, thinks this is the end of his adventures. He closes his eyes and believes he has nothing to regret. Such a beautiful girl will kill him anyway. Suddenly someone pushes the young man away with their hands. He opens his eyes and sees Caroline in the form of a vampire. Her stats and level were also shown. It was clear. Her parameters are significantly higher than those of this ghost. The young man sees Caroline's glow and understands. Now her traits are incomparably higher than before she has unleashed her true power. He recalls, during the battle with the iron golem, her face also changes. It turns out that as soon as Carolina starts fighting at full strength, she changes form. So in this case, Suda can now fully trust Carly. Carolina dispels the ghost's magic and, addressing her by name Yuko, asks, does she understand whom she just raised her hand against? The court notes that Caroline's clothes are in rags, but she doesn't care now. Suddenly, the young man notices the ghost's face. The girl was in complete shock and calling Carolina the maid, asked what she was doing here. Suda repeated the words of the ghost about the maid and thought, Carolina is probably familiar with this ghost. It turned out that she had long ago gotten rid of emotions, and now it scares her to death. Carolina began to insist that Yuko had become unusually bold, but she never thought she would live to see the day when Yuko decided to show her teeth. The girl screamed and waved her hands. insisting that things were not as they seemed and that she would never raise a hand against Carolina's maid. Carolina places her hand on her thigh and sternly calls Yuko's name, then orders her to quickly get down to the ground. In a moment, the ghost falls to the ground and hangs at Carolina's feet, crying for forgiveness. Purely understood, this girl obeys Carly. Carolina closes her eyes and says that Yuko was wrong, so she needs to apologize not to her but to her master Suda. Yuko is shocked. She begins to scream why Carolina obeys a human for demons. It is a disgrace to serve these worthless humans. The only one to whom the servants can remain loyal is Lord Ibris. Carolina starts to get angry and says that if Yuko insults her master again, she will kill her. Yuko got so scared that she jumped up, then pressed her fingers into the ground and, confused, turned to Suda and stared at her. The girl says she did not know. The young man is traveling with Carolina, so she politely asks him to forgive her for her inappropriate behavior. She bows and shouts that she is really very sorry. Suda stretches out her hands with palms forward and says that there is no need to apologize like that. Carolina tells Suda to forgive them for this misunderstanding, because it seems that her former colleague from the previous job caused him trouble. Suda smiles, but inside he is overwhelmed by strange feelings. He doesn't understand anything and now has a lot of questions. Yuko stepped aside, completely depressed. Carolina said that Yuko has a very nasty character, but could he really abandon her? Carolina? The girl replied that she would try to explain to her. Attacking people is wrong. Suda said he understood everything, but asked Carolina not to be too harsh with Yuko. The girl thanked her master for understanding. At first Suda was going to subdue the spirit, but it was Carolina's friend, so he couldn't do that. And if Carolina watches over her, there will be no problems. Carolina calls Yuko and says that this time Suda decided to forgive her, but only on the condition that she never hurts people again. But although Yuko was forgiven by the owner Carolina, Carolina herself did not, because the girl spoiled Carolina's clothes which Suda gave her, so Yuko will have to be punished for that. Carolina becomes truly scary. The girl asks Yuko if she is ready for punishment and she herself trembles with fear. She asked Carolina not to do this, but the girl replied that it was extremely necessary. Caroline said that because of her fault, Yuko will receive 100 slaps on the harmful place. If Yuko tries to break free or interfere with Caroline, the girl will add the same amount on top of that. Yuko began to cry. Carolina began to carry out the punishment. Suda believed that the ghost could not be physically hurt, so he did not understand at all how it worked. Suda looked at all this and thought, what Carolina is doing to this girl raised a troubling question in the young man. He tried to understand what kind of character Curly really has, and then the problem resolved itself. Later it turned out the quest failed. Aphrodite asks if maybe they shouldn't have released that ghost. Suda says that now they definitely will not see a reward from the guild, but he is glad that everything ended well. Suddenly Seal turns to Caroline and asks what thread she had with that ghost. Suda thanks Seal he himself wanted to find out about it. Carolina says that Yuko was her colleague at her previous job. They worked as maids and usually took care of cleaning, cooking, and all that kind of stuff. Aphrodite says that is understandable, but when Aphrodite said that Yuko is a demon in the cemetery, the goddess decided that she would be troublesome. But in the end, she caused them no problems. Aphrodite asked if lower demons are really that weak. Suda realized that it was not so. Even despite her status, Yuko's traits were very high, so Yuko cannot be called weak in speech. He understands. Judging by the strength of Carolina and Yuko, the rest of the powerful demonic subordinates are definitely not weaker than them. He realizes that even imagining what these subordinates are capable of is already frightening. Suddenly, Aphrodite realizes they have come to a familiar place. The girl asks if they were here recently when breeding monsters. The boy replies that today he caught a few more, so it is better to breed them immediately before they return to the inn. Aphrodite understands that Suda is talking about these fire ghosts. She asks if they really live in the capsule too. The girl replies, how can she live there now? Suda recalls that these ghosts seem to be able to be mixed with wolves. If you mix a fire spirit with a wolf, you get a monster called Kitsunebai. The stats remain the same, but the skills increase. Suda decides to cross wolf and Hidadama. As a result, a small fox comes out. Everyone around was simply delighted with the cute monster. Suda realizes such a cute monster is obtained if you cross Hidadama with a wolf. Carolina says that Kitsunebai is a witch-useful monster. She says that Kitsunebai can use 2 types of magic simultaneously. For lower races, this is incredibly rare, and demons often keep them as pets. Suda realizes that the monster is very cute and helpful. Meanwhile, Sil spread her arms and said that the fox cub is very cute. She began to hug him and said that she wanted to take care of him herself, because she could be in the capsule with him around the clock. Suda allows Sil to do this, and the girl thanks her mistress for the opportunity to care for the little fox cub. The boy returns to Aphrodite and asks what is wrong with her. The girl begins to cry and insists that she does not love him because she is the sweetest and most beautiful in the world. Suda understands. The girl is jealous of this beast. Then he says that they still have 3 wolves and 3 Hidadamas left, so he will make 3 more Kitsunebai. Suddenly, a system message appears before Suda. A rare selection has occurred. The next moment, a huge C-rank Ketamaru emerged before them. The monster had incredible vitality. He was a sage among all the monsters living in the forest, and his fur was a very valuable and rare material, so merchants willingly paid large sums for it. Suda tried to find out what kind of monster it was, because he fulfilled all the conditions for Kitsunebai, but got a completely different monster. Memory preserved a warning before the transition. He was allowed to perform a rare transition. So the young man assumes that this is what happened, but the chance of that transition was only 5. Carolina says that this is the first time she has seen such a monster. Suda realized, even she does not know what this fluffy creature is. The girl says that in all 300 years she has never seen such monsters, probably because it belongs to a very rare species that lives in remote places. Suda thinks that he was lucky to get such a rare monster, but is it worth using it? He has no magical abilities like Kitsunebai, and although his health reserve is high, it still does not reach the level of Adamantech Golem. Suddenly, Aphrodite approaches the monster. The girl touches his fur and says that it is simply incredible. She begins to touch the monster and says that it has very beautiful fur. It reminds her of a cute little animal. She asks Suda to order the monster to lie down. He does not understand what the girl has in mind but still asks Kageyama to lie down. The monster obediently turns onto its back and flops onto the ground. Aphrodite jumps on top and begins to gently nestle in the monster's soft fur. Suddenly she jumps up and says that this is exactly what she wanted. The monster is simply perfect. She asks Suda to allow her to take care of him because she could sleep on him forever. Suda asks if this means that he has fulfilled Aphrodite's wish. She wanted a very large and soft bed. The girl replies that the fur and softness of this monster are no worse than beds in the heavens. Suda says since the girl likes this monster, she can take him for herself. Suddenly, Aphrodite gets up from the monster and with gratitude throws herself at Suda. Suda understands. He is incredibly lucky because now he has completely fulfilled the request of the goddess Aphrodite. After some time, Suda shifts his gaze to the capsule and realizes that Aphrodite no longer even asks to be released from there. It seems she really liked that monster and now he calmly occupies the entire table alone. Although now he cannot look at the beauty Aphrodite in the morning, it is not a big deal. They spent too much time in one bed during the day, so acquiring the fluffy monster was worth it. Before going to sleep, Suda decided to check his stats. Suddenly he noticed a new skill appeared: psychological manipulation. Psychological manipulation is a rank B skill. Thanks to it, the user can subjugate the body and mind of a subordinate monster. Suda realized that he acquired this skill through a rare crossbreeding, but the principle of its operation is still unclear. He believes that if his body remains unprotected while he uses this technique, then its application will be extremely dangerous. But now he is in the hotel, it's safe here, so he simply cannot resist trying this skill. The system lets Suda choose a monster. The young man sees that he can even choose Aphrodite and realizes, then he can have as much fun as he wants playing the role of Aphrodite. He cuts off these thoughts and says he would never do that because he made a promise. Then he cuts them off again and thinks he will choose Aphrodite because it's not his fault she is first on the list. Choosing Aphrodite, the system says the skill level is too low so he cannot control this monster. Suda realizes he must choose another monster. A crazy mycelium comes to mind and he sends spores to Aphrodite so she loses control. He realizes it's worth it. He lies down on the bed and runs through in his head how the new skill will work. So he decides to transfer his consciousness into the body of the crazy mushroom. Suda squeezed inside the crazy mushroom and could not believe it really worked. He understood, he is in a capsule. And the only strange thing for him was that everything around seemed so huge. Looking at his limbs, he shuddered. The feeling was as if he had ended up inside the crazy mushroom. It turns out this skill really works, and now he is already inside the capsule. If so, time to visit Seal, Caroline, and Aphrodite. He rushed and jumped straight to the girls. The young man was curious what they were doing inside the capsule, because from outside it was impossible to see everything. The first one he met was Aphrodite sleeping as always. Suda noticed how incredibly beautiful she was. He immediately understood. This is no surprise because the local monsters do not bother the girls, so Aphrodite is completely relaxed. Suda realizes this is the perfect chance to tease Aphrodite. She is in great shape. He knows the sin is not to take advantage of this while he is in the body of a mad mushroom. In other words, he can play her without any risk. He jumps over the girl, thinking that he has no right to miss this chance. Suddenly, the soft monster wakes up and pushes away the mad mushroom. It breaks free and flies in an unknown direction. Lying on the grass, Suda felt he was about to die. He apologized to the crazy mushroom. Suda realized the monster had already guessed the boy's plans, so he had to be on guard. He didn't even have time to understand what exactly had happened. Suda gets up from his place and thinks, if Aphrodite's monster is so vigilant, then it will look for someone else. After some time, he meets Carolina and tries to understand what she is doing. Suddenly, the girl shouts at them not to slow down. She shouts at the goblins not to dare dodge because as soon as the left hand does not give way, she cannot allow his army to relax. Then he realized, in her free time, Carolina trained the goblins, so their levels increased on their own even though he did not send them into battle, because all the credit belonged to Carolina. She kicks one goblin right in the face, calls him by name Cora, and says that the order to rest has not yet been given. Suda had a perfect plan, to make Carolina hit him and in return to look at her clothes again. He understands that it is time to seize control, so he becomes a goblin knight. Finding himself in the body of a goblin knight, Suda does not understand why the armor and sword are insanely heavy, and he is also attacked by a sense of danger. Suddenly, Caroline approaches him and asks why he stopped. She says the goblin knight will suffer for this, so from now on she will double the gravity for him from 5 to 10 times. Suddenly, Suda realizes Caroline has the ability to increase gravity. She uses this spell to make training more effective, so it's no wonder Suda can't even get up. He can't get up and thinks, is this too hard or is he just a bad fighter? Caroline approached, lifted her leg, and asked how much longer to wait until the goblin knight lies on the ground, then stepped on his head. Suda decided that this action was just wow because a beautiful maid girl stepped on him, and he could even see her clothes. Suda realizes he is in paradise. The girl starts screaming that the goblin's gaze is scary. She hesitates whether he is really a goblin at all. His eyes frighten her. In them she sees a human look and feels the presence of magic. Suda understands the situation is extremely dangerous. He also knows he won't stay in this body much longer. He thinks he will get what he wants, so it's time to go all in. He focuses and chooses the next monster. His choice is Kitsunebai. If you think about it, it's not so bad. Goblins are unlikely to evoke sympathy in girls, but Kitsunebai are very cute. Since he is so cute now, it's a sin not to take advantage of this, so it's time to visit CL. After some time, Suda reaches Zyle's house. Apparently, she managed to build it using new materials. It's really impressive. He realizes, to build even such a simple house, good skills are needed. He approaches the door and starts scratching it with his paws. The girl opens the door and sees Kitsunebai, the seal that Sela named Katero. Suda immediately understood. Seal gave this fox a name. The young man did not understand why Seal in the capsule seemed so attractive specifically to him. The plan worked perfectly. Now he can admire this spectacle as much as he wants. Sil says that Kodar is breathing so hard and asks if the fox cub is not feeling well. Sil takes him in his arms and carries him into the house. The court believes that this is all just a perfect cover-up. He thinks being Kitsunebai is cool, and he also decides to try something better, so he immediately attacks Sil and plays her. Suda and Sil are alone on one bed. Suda, in the form of a cute little fox, suddenly jumps right onto Sil. The girl laughs loudly. The fox fur turns out to be terribly ticklish. Suda enjoys time with CL. The girl asks Katero to stop. She is trembling from the tickling, but the fox cannot stop, so he has to try everything possible. Suddenly, the fox slips under the t-shirt and starts tickling there. The cat judge is overwhelmed by a terrible tickle. The girl blushes. Suda looks surprised at how Sil seems to blush from being tickled. He thought the fox cubs were cute, but didn't think it would go this far. Suddenly, Carolina enters the house of Sil. Sil is terrified to madness and screams. Caroline asks what happened to Sil and why she jerked up so sharply. Sil replies that nothing of the sort happened. Then she panics and asks why Carolina suddenly decided to come, if something happened, or maybe this is some kind of task preparation. Carolina says she came here not because of work. She is actually worried about something. Suda thinks Carolina is clearly untimely. If she suddenly suspects something again, he will quickly take control. The girl says that for some reason she feels the presence of the master here. The fox is scared to shock. The young man thinks, if something happens, he will run away immediately. Seal asks what Carolina means because how can Suda even get into the ball capsule? Carolina runs her finger along her chin and says that theoretically it should not be possible, but she feels his presence. The girl is able to sense and distinguish the souls of all beings. Suda considers this already dangerous because Carolina can feel his soul in the fox. Seal asks, does Suda not hunt monsters and yet not be a timer? Then why would he put himself into the capsule? Caroline says that is absolutely correct. Caroline asks if one of his skills allows him to travel in the capsule. KL says he does not think that is possible. She thinks that next time they meet, she will have to ask Suda about it directly. Carolina says she completely agrees. Suda sighs with relief and thinks he is saved, but he was very close to failure. Carolina opens the door, apologizes for disturbing, and says they will see each other tomorrow. Before leaving, the girl also says that she does not consider it worth using monsters to satisfy her curious fantasies. This wildly confuses Seal. After some time, Suda returns to his body, looks at the capsule, and thinks that, as expected, this is all in Carolina's style. It was extremely dangerous, and Carolina is a very perceptive girl. He thinks he will have to refrain from using this skill. The next day, the young man came to the Adventurers Guild. Everyone was buzzing about him. They said he was the very traveler who managed to destroy the recent ghost. But everyone insisted that he was still just a child. Suda feels a strange atmosphere because of these rumors, especially after Caroline defeated the ghost, and he himself just informed KH Lo about it. He remembers telling the girl that he thinks the ghost will no longer cause problems for anyone. Suddenly, someone approaches Suda. It turns out to be guard Westbergen. The man says he wants to talk to Suda for a bit. Suda asks the man who he is. The man apologizes for his ignorance. He winks and introduces himself, guard West Bird from the family of heroes. Suda is amazed, a boy from a family of heroes. Guard says that 300 years ago his ancestors performed great feats in the war against the mighty demon Ibris. Esrona knows them, Westbergs, a family of heroes. It is believed that every member of the Westbird family is eventually reincarnated, accumulating new strength daily until one day they overcome a mighty demon again. Suda asks what exactly the young man wanted to talk to him about. The guard says he was amazed he managed to defeat the ghost from the cemetery. He wanted to ask the court to help tame the mighty demon. The court begins to shout if it is true that the mighty demon has been reincarnated. To this, Guard replies that it is better not to talk about such things here. He says if he is interested, then tonight Suda can go to the bar in the north. Their guard will tell him everything. After some time, Aphrodite says that she is against pacification because she needs to accumulate even more power. Suda did not understand Aphrodite's reaction. At first, she wanted to quickly finish with Ibris and return to the sky, but now he hears an answer that turns out to be completely unexpected. He wonders if it is not too cozy in Ketamaru that she forgot about paradise. It sounds quite plausible. Suda decides to ask what Sil thinks. The girl replies, if it is true, she unconditionally agrees the demon must be dealt with, and the sooner the fewer the victims. He decides to ask Caroline. The girl says it's pointless because the powerful demon the man is talking about is a fake. Suda asked where the girl knew this from. Carolina replied that she was too confident. In fact, she wanted to say something else. It seemed to her that the demon might not be real. She could go and listen to find out more. Suda says if so, it's worth just trying to listen to him. If it's too risky, you can refuse. He asks if Aphrodite agrees with this. The girl awkwardly nods, agrees. Later, already at night, Suda enters the bar that the guard talked about. A young man was sitting with a glass of wine and said he knew Suda would come. He advises to get straight to the point. The guard says there were rumors that evil spirits settled in a mansion in the east and asks if Suda has heard anything about it. The young man replied that he had heard nothing about it at all. The guard continued, they say rumors that several high-ranking adventurers did not return from there, so he decided to entrust this matter to Suda. Suda asked if the mighty demon himself would be present. In his mind he thought, probably he lives somewhere in a tall tower. The guard said that could also be the case. The guy thought, that's where it should have started. Then he heard the guard ask if the reward for coal 30 million would be enough for him. Suda immediately jumped up from his seat and grunted. About 30 million coal. The guard replied that Suda heard correctly when he said he was a descendant of heroes, so such money meant nothing to him. The guy thought if you analyze what he heard, it's hardly the mighty demon, but even if it's fake they pay 30 million for it, and that's already very cool. He had no idea yet that the mission in the mine was so expensive, at least not that much. Suda begins to shine, then says he will do everything possible. The guard replies, that's really cool. Later they say goodbye and say words that they will fight together for peace on Earth, then they leave. Suddenly a bat lands on Suda's shoulder and she flies off towards the guard. Then the guard sat on the sofa, drank beer, and said that another fish was swallowed by the bait without any effort. Bait was watching him. One man asked the guard if he would really take the risk once more and go fight the monsters, and when he got exhausted, the fisherman would take his share. The guard said, if a strong monster happens to be nearby, then Suda can be abandoned and they can simply leave. The guard continued, noble blood always attracts people, and if you hint at a powerful demon and monster hunting, the state pays money to the Lord Heroes. He laughs and praises the cause of taming the powerful demon. Another man also laughs and says that no one will doubt the words of the noble hero. All this time the bat listens. Then the mouse flies to Caroline and tells her everything it heard. The girl got angry and says that dragging the master's name for such low purposes is very mean, so the offenders should not expect mercy. The next day Suda, Aphrodite, Caroline, and Sayal reach a huge mansion. Aphrodite asks if they are really going there because what if the real Ibris is there? She also says, even an ordinary guy can beat Suda, so maybe they should level up a bit more. Seal replies that she is afraid. Suda also feels a strange discomfort, but it is unlikely that the real Ibris is here. Caroline calms everyone down. She asks everyone to relax. The magical power coming from the mansion is definitely not from the master of the powerful demon. Still, the huge magical might hints at a high-ranking entity, but Suda will deal with it. Suda awkwardly smiles and thinks that Caroline, as always, overestimates his abilities, but since Curly is with him, he is sure there is nothing to fear. Of course, what exactly will happen is unknown, but he must keep himself together. So he is the first to open the mansion door. He notices, although the house is old and dirty, it is still very beautiful. Caroline freezes in place. Suda asks what happened to her, but the girl immediately declares that before her is a wonderful collection, only the very first-class books are gathered here. Suda asks if this fulfills Caroline's wish that the books be from all times and peoples. The girl nods and says she wants to have such a large selection in the capsule so that it is not boring there. Suda believes that since these are the books Curly asked for, they can try to drag the bookshelf into the capsule. But first they need to decide what to do with the mansion's residents after all. It is still unclear whose property this is. Suddenly they hear Aphrodite scream and immediately rush to help. The girl screams that there are terrible and disgusting monsters here. Next to her is a level 15 and class E ghoul, high survivability, great physical strength, but no skills. Suda says that right now he will put them in the capsule, but Aphrodite categorically forbade it. She says they already live in a capsule and she does not want to live next to this rot. Suda agrees and calls several kitsunebai. The monsters raise fire magic and burn the ghouls together immediately. Suda looks at the strange pile and says that now the rotten meat has a crispy crust. At that moment, CL petted the foxes, calling them good fellows. Later, Carolina says she is sure. The door releases the same magic she talked about earlier. Suda gritted his teeth and opened the door. Behind this door, Yuko was changing. Seeing Suda, the girl screamed. She asked what the boy was doing here and ordered him to get out of the room. Carolina also entered the room and asked what Yuko was doing there. The girl recognized her as the head maid. The girl asks what she is doing here, then says this is her home and goes into her room. Aphrodite asks what they will do next. The seal clarifies if they know Yuka. The boy understands they need to start by asking Yuka. Sitting at the table, Yuko told me that she moved to live in a city far to the east, but predatory hunters completely destroyed her house and she found this mansion. Its owner probably died of illness, so the place was empty. She decided to take over it and now lives here. Suda said that, in his opinion, Yuka lives in a cemetery. The girl replied that she comes there to revive new allies because there are so many corpses and that means so much great material. She bites her nail and says that now travelers and hunters have started visiting the mansion. The girl calls people disgusting. Carolina explains that the state generously pays hunters monetary rewards. Suda understands the hunter's goal is money. Guard tells him the same. The young man asks what Yuko does when someone comes to her house. He clarifies, does she really kill them? Yuko answers that if it is a stranger, she does not even touch them with a finger, she just asks them to leave the mansion. Of course, no matter who comes, she releases galls on him so that they bite him a little. Suda thinks that this is where to start. Suddenly, a group of people enters the room, and one of them says that he does not even know who lives here. That the guard is watching the boy, he says he thought Suda would come alone. But this is even more interesting. Suda asks what this guard is doing here. The boy answers, hasn't Suda figured it out yet? He says that Suda is just a pawn that he sacrifices. He used the main character and sent him here to fight monsters. The guard says that during the fight he actually wanted to kill everyone at once, but since the enemy is her, there is no need to wait. He laughs and asks Suda's group what they will do with them, the hunter from the Rose Festival clan. Suda understands they are in deep trouble. Guard's story seems strange to him, but he had no idea that the very sky would deceive him. Carolina angrily throws at the owner, let her deal with this trash. She says she needs only 10 seconds to tear them apart and get rid of the corpses. Suda shouts that it is impossible. She believes, if Carolina is given free rein, she will definitely decide their fate, so they need to equalize their forces. The young man summons a goblin knight and orders him to attack. The guard says he thought these are just rumors, but in reality Suda is a monster collector. And in general, he thinks it is a disgusting profession. He says that Suda actually believes one of his green knights will protect him from 10 boys of the guard. Suda grimaces in a smile and says that there was no talk about him having only one goblin. At that moment, a small pack of goblins with weapons appears before him. The guard was surprised where so many goblins came from. Suda thought that even a person like the guard could be scared, because using 15 creatures is about level 150. The guard hisses for Suda not to move and orders his boys. They may be in the minority, but some goblins are no match for them. During this battle, Suda notices his goblin's armor is forged in Seal's Forge, and the goblins themselves are trained by Carolinus, so the enemies have no chance to win. After some time, the guard's squad was completely defeated. Suddenly, a giant man addresses the guard, calls him sir, and says he will do everything, so he asks to pass it on to him. His name was Doman Baldux, and he was 35 years old. With one sweep, he crushes a whole bunch of goblins together. Suda does not understand who this man is and why he is so strong. Later, the goblin squad was defeated. The guard praised his servant Damon and said that he alone could be relied upon. Demon issues the order follow him, and guard orders to tear off Suda's head. The man tells the protagonist that he will show how to harm Mr. Guard. Suda grabs the capsule and realizes something stronger than goblin knights is needed here. He calls the cat warlock Naya and orders him to attack. The monster repels Damon's attack. He claims that the monster is not so bad after all. The guard shouts that Suda actually has a werewolf. The young man replies that the werewolf is a worthy opponent and calls the guard a weakling. Suda approaches the guard in a terrifying manner and says that he still has many comrades in reserve. Until he releases them, he will wait for his last words. Guard can no longer hold on and falls to the ground. He cannot believe his own eyes and asks Suda who he is. At this moment, Damon turns around and shouts to the guard that it is too dangerous here, so they need to run away from here. The court wonders where they are going to run and then calls the crazy mushrooms. In a moment, mushrooms jump out and sprinkle everyone with a powder of chaos. In a moment, the guard chokes on a cough and cannot understand what is happening. His whole body begins to burn. He turns around and sees all the members of his clan starting to confess love to each other and attack each other. Guard yells at them and doesn't understand what the hell they are doing. The guard orders Demon to disperse all these people, but the man approaching him from behind blushes and says he has always loved Guard and adores him with all his heart. He grabs him and says, when Guard puts on a brave mask, it is simply impossible to resist. Guard starts shouting about what Suda did to his clan and swears he will not let it go like that. Suda folded his hands and thought that the Rose Festival had finally received its deserved punishment, and now their name suited them perfectly. At that moment, Aphrodite whispered that Suda had deliberately placed mushrooms there, having planned everything in advance. Sil said that he was an animal. Then Yuko starts laughing and says that she hasn't laughed like that for a long time. Then she asks Suda if he will kill those people, and then says that it was very spectacular for an ordinary person. Suda thanks her for the compliment. Carolina grabs Yuko by the ear and says how dare she speak to her master with her dirty mouth. Yuko screams and begins to apologize to everyone. The judge turns to Yuko and says that she probably better leave this estate. Rumors about the appearance of evil spirits here have already spread far and wide. Stronger hunters may come here. The girl replies, that's bad advice. She says that nothing will change because for people like her, there is no peaceful place in this world where she would not be persecuted and hunted. The court believes that Yuko now looks different than she did at the cemetery back then. At that time, her features were somewhat blurred. Maybe she has two modes like Carolina, ghost mode and human mode. He thinks his assumption is correct. The court says it knows a suitable quiet place for her. The girl doubts that it is true. Suda says that it is convenient there. The square is bigger than the estate and the hunters will not enter. Yuko replies that she is very interested, but she does not believe it. However, if it is true, she would like him to show her the place. Suda agrees with her and says that Yuko can turn away. The girl turns away. Aphrodite and the seal begin to understand what is happening here. And in a moment, Suda touches Yuko with the capsule containing the ball. She flashes with light. His theory is confirmed, and Yuko can be touched in human mode. He squeezes the capsule and thinks that now the residents will be able to sleep peacefully and completely safe. Yuko did not understand where she was, and Suda was thinking about how he caught the cute ghost girl today. A week later, Suda stood in front of the mansion where Yuko once lived. It turned out that he had bought this house. One such mansion, as he heard, cost more than 5 billion coal, but rumors that monsters lived there did their job and the price dropped significantly. So Suda was able to buy the house for about a tenth of the original amount. Suda realized he would have to give up almost the entire reward for ore mining, but it was worth it because he was a little anxious that all this time his monsters were sitting in the capsule, and now they could finally live in this huge house. He thinks now Caroline has books and he has already completed all 3 of the girl's tasks. He hears a voice from the side. It's not worth wandering here, you need to go help. It was Aphrodite. The girl said that this mansion was too big and they would never have time to clean it up. The girl did not understand why a goddess should even bother with cleaning. Yuko said she perfectly understood Aphrodite. Well, why should she, a demoness, listen to some people? Suda observed all these arguments during the general cleaning. Caroline turned to Yuko and asked what she said about her master Suda. In panic, the girl blurted out, she said nothing like that. Aphrodite and the foxes swept the floor like a whirlwind, goblin knights in armor with a seal, and Suda washed the floor, and a huge golem repaired the building outside. After some time, the mansion simply shone with cleanliness. After some time, Suda gave each girl a separate room, and everything they asked for he transferred to the capsule to finally sleep in silence. But as it turned out, he had calculated everything, and now Sally, Caroline, and Aphrodite had to sleep with him on a big bed. He fell asleep thinking that he had already bought the house, equipped the capsule, and yet nothing seemed to have changed. The next morning, Suda opened his eyes to the sound of heavy footsteps. Someone was stomping with all their might. Aphrodite rushed into the room and said that something terrible had happened. Some man had grabbed Caroline. Suda went down to the exit and saw Carolina, and behind her an unknown person. The girl apologized to the owner and said she had been too inattentive. The one standing behind her turned out to be a girl. She said she had heard that demons live in this mansion, but it turned out that people also came here. Sil also went down to the exit and saw the whole scene. The stranger was asking why the person was cooperating with evil spirits, and she was still holding a blade to Carolina's neck. Cell asked if this was the same teacher and why she had asked to come to her specifically, saying he recognized the voice of his teacher. Suda pondered, could this be the teacher who disappeared without a trace, having gone to fight demons 2 years ago? The girl pulled off her hood and asked how CL ended up here at all. Her name was Rika Garbonento, she was from a family of dwarves and she was 23 years old. After some time had passed, Riko was informed of all the details of what had happened earlier. The girl turned to Suda and said that she should have thanked him first. She sincerely thanks Seal for saving her. And she also says, at that moment she was not in the city, so she wouldn't have made it anyway. Suda replies that there is no need to apologize, Seal had saved him more than once. Rika says that she understood. Caroline was taken captive by the Bakurji family, and that means she was also saved by Suda. Suda replies that everything is absolutely correct, so Caroline is not as evil a demon as the girl thought. Rika says that the Bakurji company has a very loud but not the best reputation, and Suda's courage is worthy of praise. The young man sighs and thinks, everything is fine because Rika understood him. The girl says that, unfortunately, there is not a single good demon in this world and she lunges at Carolina, but she skillfully dodges. Suda asks what the girl is doing and Rika replies, she simply submitted to this demon because he is already under their control. Suda tries to prove that this is not true, but Carolina replies, he should not try to convince her otherwise because arguing with people like her is pointless. During the fight, Rika notices that Carolina is incredibly fast, and Carly responds that Rika strikes as if she were human. Then Carolina says that, out of respect for Ricky's weapon, she will release a bit of her power. Suda realized everything had really gone bad because Carolina was now in vampire mode. The girl swung sharply and hit Rika right in the torso. Sayal rushes to her teacher, and Carolina tells her to stay calm. After all, they were not killed, so the girl will soon regain consciousness. After some time, Rika finally woke up. She was sitting on the bed and laughing nervously. The demon had beaten her, then pitied her. It was humiliating for her. Suda asked why Rika hates demons so much. The girl answered, it happened once near St. Bell. They came across the former commander of the demonic army Rumel. Rika's squad had 6 people, and all of them were rank adventurers. She remembers how their squad was completely defeated with a colossal loss in strength. She says that not only this demon, but the entire demon army scattered across the world and gives people no peace anywhere. Rika says that this is why, for the sake of her comrades, she decided to join the hunter's squad and destroy evil spirits so that no monster would trample this land. Everyone was completely immersed in Rika's story. After the story, Rick gets out of bed and bows, saying that if she had come to tell him about it, her confidence would have been shaken, so she left town without saying a word. She approaches Seal and asks for forgiveness. The girl starts crying and says she is very happy because her teacher is alive. Rika thanks her for that. She returns to Suda and says she heard that demonic activity in this area has sharply increased, so she came here. She was initially confused by this estate and then by the casino built on the site of the Bakurji company. Suda was surprised to learn that a casino had already been built there. Rika said that huge lungs are being dealt there, and inside are many visitors who later become hostages. There were rumors that all this was connected with demons. The girl says they planted spies. Contact with them has already been lost, so maybe they are no longer alive. Suda interrupts her and asks if he can take the case himself, and Rika is very surprised. The girl says that danger threatens them there, but the young man replies that it's okay because the girl herself saw what only Carolina is capable of. Ikai takes a capsule and says he has other strong allies, so they will help Commander Rika and prove to her that good demons exist. After some time, Suda and the group reach their destination, the casino. The young man thinks he should quietly come here for reconnaissance again, and still does not understand why Aphrodite followed him. The girl says that letting Suda go there alone is very dangerous, because she will not forgive him if he squanders all the money earned by hard work. Suda catches the whisper of strangers nearby. One man says that the place supposedly has been feeling good lately. Another claims, the previous management of the company Bakurji disappeared without a trace, and the new management turned out to be more enterprising. Suda thinks that this is probably the very disappearance in which he himself is involved. After that, he became interested in how things are going in this company. From what Ricky tells, a lot of money revolves around this place. He decides to see what is going on and goes inside. Inside the building, everything was shining and sparkling, and beautiful waitresses were serving champagne. People were drinking expensive wine and having fun at the tables. Suda sees a bunch of girls in bunny costumes and suddenly notices tags on their necks and wonders what that is. A man approaches and, addressing them as dear guests, asks if this is their first visit to the establishment. His name was Los Torizolti and he was 84 years old. The man said that the girls had price tags hanging on their necks. Suda is impressed by the age of this man. He says that all the women on the staff of their establishment are merchandise. If a client wins, he can buy the girl he likes for a special currency. Suda asks about the man. He says he did not have time to introduce himself. His name is Lost. He is the chief commissioner of the firm Bakraji and accordingly the owner of the casino. Suda understood, this is the new peak of the company according to rumors that have spread. Compared to the usual hostage distribution, a casino with winnings ignites passion and brings more profit. The man leaves and says that if they have questions, they can safely call him. Aphrodite whispers to Suda, lost is not quite human. Suda understands. Age confirms Aphrodite's words, but it seems the demon's piercing gaze does not switch to human mode, otherwise he would have felt Aphrodite's aura, as happened with Caroline. So it turns out the demon is indeed involved with this place. Aphrodite says that first and foremost they need to learn more about the enemy here. Soda understands. The girl just wanted to play around in this place. After 2 hours, Soda was sitting on the couch, his face colorless. It turned out he had lost a lot of money. The game started cheerfully. He had one easy victory after another, but when he began to raise the stakes, the cards just didn't fall into place. Suddenly, Aphrodite runs up to him and throws herself at him, apologizing incessantly. The girl lost. Soda says that she lost too and tries to calm her down. He said it was all right. He and Aphrodite each spent 500,000 call, so this month they only invested in planned expenses. There was still over 1 million left in the capsule, and a little later they would apologize together to the girls. Aphrodite said there was nothing in the capsule because she lost all the money that was there. Soda froze in shock, now they were bankrupt. Aphrodite tried to understand why Soda brought her to this corner and what he intended to do. Even the girl guessed that the guy wanted to do something bad, but Soda asked her not to overthink. He asked if the girl really lost all the money. Aphrodite replied that at first she lost 500,000 and then decided to get it back. Soda asked if Aphrodite noticed anything strange. Small bets were won at first, but as soon as the stakes were raised, the girl started losing more and more often. The girl thought and said that something like that really happened. Soda said he had a feeling they didn't lose, they were simply cheated. Aphrodite was very surprised. Suda said that Ricky stated, clients were burdened with debts then taken hostage and the debts were forged and turned into merchandise. In short, the money was dirty and the men were sold as cheap labor. The young man takes a capsule and says he wants to expose their schemes. He asks Aphrodite to watch over his body and if anything happens, to call him through that skill contact. The youth realizes, if he slips through the ventilation, he will probably be able to get out on the other side of the wall and then he will need the kitsunebai form. Aphrodite asks Suda to stop because she does not understand what he has planned. Suda remembers that he did not tell Aphrodite. His new skill allows her to possess the bodies of other monsters. In that case, he would possess the body of a small kitsunebai. Then he penetrates the fox body and asks Aphrodite to catch him. The girl grabs the soulless body and immediately sees how the kitsunebai escapes into the ventilation. Suda realized that it is actually difficult to uncover the enemy's plan. Suddenly, he heard laughter. There were 2 men in the room. Odi said that he would now give himself freedom from laughter. The other objected that he, of course, could not talk about that beautiful blonde. Judging by the appearance, she was an aristocrat. Suda understood. By the description, the men were talking about Aphrodite. They continued discussing her and wondered why only stupid clients came to their establishment, those who do not follow the game at all and notice nothing. One says that they mixed the suits of cards with illusion magic. This news surprises Suda. They instantly revealed all the secrets. Illusion magic is a type of dark magic. Suddenly, the casino owner enters the room. He asks why the men are not working. Lost asks what about that blonde. He gave the order, squeeze every last drop out of her. Another man says that he easily tricked her out of 10 million coal, all thanks to the illusion magic taught to him by Mr. Laws. He says that the blonde ran away, wiping tears from her eyes, and suddenly Lost hits him in the face with full force. He says that he has repeated many times. The game needs to add debt for foolish people and put them on the counter. Then he says that a girl with such appearance can be taught to dance and sold to aristocrats, and then they can earn at least 30 million coal. The man says that he can fix everything, but in response he gets a kick from Lost, who explains to him how. Lur starts yelling at the man, saying that he is incredibly stupid because he lost a lot of money, so he is just worthless trash. When the man faints, he wastes lives and mumbles that this is the reason why he hates dealing with people so much. Suda understands people are pure trash to him, and this means that the demon who was considered lost sees all this from the silence and watches everything here. Suda also understands that because of such good demons like Carolina, people think of them disgustingly. So he wants to smash Lost's affairs to pieces. After a few days, Carolina says that her intuition suggests there are representatives of her kind in this house. She also adds that the aura she feels seems to belong to a worthless lower demon, so he won't sniff her out from there. Suda thinks, as always, there is no one more reliable than Carolina. He recalls that he sold several rare items from the estate and collected 20 million kolai. Now they only have this money. The game that the young man decided to challenge is poker. He has already lost so much that it is hard to count. Now he asks how much he is ready to bet. Suda puts everything on the line and declares that he is ready to risk everything he has. Everyone turned to Suda. He bet 200 chips. No one could understand why someone would bet 20 million. The man says that this move cannot be taken back. The boy is confident in his actions. Suda says he is absolutely sure. The man says they start the game then. Carolina stood next to Suda. Suda thought he was preparing for the worst, but it seems the man just considered Suda stupid. He sees. The man's face is too confident. He believes in his art and magic, in the cunning tricks he shows. Suda raises the cards and realizes he got a bad hand. He didn't even get a pair. The man asks if Suda needs to reshuffle the cards. The boy agrees. With the new attempt, he again gets nothing. Of course, there is a chance of such an outcome, but they lost so much just yesterday, so this is no longer just a coincidence. Plus, it is all written on the dealer's face. Suda gives Carla the command and she magically changes the cards in Suda's hands. Suda shows his cards and says he has all trumps and a royal straight flush hand. Everyone in this area was simply blown away by such a revelation. A royal straight flush hand is 100 times bigger bet, so the win amounts to 20 billion losing calls. The dealer says that this simply cannot be. Suda realizes, if that man decided to cheat them with magic, then they can win with the same magic, just a bit more powerful. Suda's team has a professional mage. The dealer starts accusing Suda of cheating and asks how exactly he did it. Suda in response asks why the dealer calls him a cheater. Did that man really know what cards he had in his hands? Suddenly, the lost one burst into the conversation, asking why there was such a noise. The dealer turns to the gentleman and apologizes. Lost looks at the table where a high combination of cards lies. He smiles, calls Suda an honored guest, and asks him to come to the office. He wants to give advice for the future, as a guest who won a large sum. He asks Carolina to wait in the corridor. When they reached Lost's office, he closed the door and said he had heard that young man won a considerable sum. He congratulated the young man. Suda thanked him for the congratulations. Lo sharply pulls a knife from under his shirt and orders Suda to take his winnings. Suda manages to dodge the knife strike and asks what losses these are, what he is up to. The man says they have no money for scoundrels like Suda. He insists it would have been better for him to simply disappear quietly and everything would have been fine. But by doing this, he only added extra work for those who had already disappeared. Suda realizes he burned down his entire office to ashes and then lost the orders his subordinates were sent to kill Suda. At that very moment, the young man takes out his ball capsule. He summons goblin knights and orders them to attack. Lost was very surprised an ordinary person has so many goblins. The goblins quickly deal with the lost subordinates. The man calls them completely useless. He says he did not want to show himself in such a form, but there is nothing to be done. He accepts his true form. His level is 23. Basic magic of fire, wind, and water, and an intermediate level of darkness.